All right, welcome back to Don't Think, Just Charge. I'm Dave, he's Harvey, and today we're going to be going over some archetypes and playstyles for your games of OnePageRules. Let's get into it. So continuing on from our video last week where we went through some list building tips and tricks on how to approach your general list building once in OnePageRules, this is now branching out that little step further. It's kind of an expansion on that video if you want to think of it that way, but also bring it back in a little bit to that analysis aspect of how to analyze your opponent's list and know what to expect for. What we're going to do is we're going to cover two broad schools of thought that we have when we are designing our lists and evaluating the lists that are in front of us, either if we're against it or we're helping people build their lists. And we're going to do this in two ways. We're going to start in a bit more esoteric, a bit more broad, and we're going to talk about the archetypes that you can expect from some of the armies in the game, and also broadly the archetypes that we think that you can build towards. There's certainly ones in there that I know I really enjoy. And those archetypes are more towards the list from a broad perspective. Then we're going to talk about some play styles, and this is a little bit more technical, a little bit more precise, and we'll explain what we mean by that when we come to it. But let's start wide first. Let's start with our archetypes. So Harvey, talk us through in a bit more detail what we mean when we're talking about an archetype.
Yeah, so in general, an archetype is kind of roughly where we expect a book to be playing, really. If someone said to you, like, I'm going to meet you at the game store on Saturday, I'm playing Dark Elves, it's what we'd be expecting in our head as to roughly what we think that book is strong at, where we think that book normally plays, which can help guide you, especially if you're new to the game and you don't really have an idea of, like, I like playing this kind of certain style. You know, how do I know which armies can do that? This is kind of like a really, really rough way of leading you towards which armies do what and what to expect from each army. So we've roughly broken it down into, it's basically two different axes. We've got defense, balance, offense running across the top, and we've got Horde, rounded and elite running across from the top to the bottom on the left. And the idea is what we've gone through, and we've just slotted each army book, that is, into one of these slots, with the goal of kind of gently informing you as to where to look when you're looking for certain play styles, but also just as just like a good way of predicting what your opponent might bring as well when you hear certain lists.
And a healthy dollop of this is quite abstract, buyer beware sort of stuff. Obviously, there are army books that are very versatile. For example, I think Alien Hives could fit into any single one of these categories, really, depending on how you want to build it. That's one example, but lots of them will fit into two of them. This is just, again, it's quite shoot from the hip style. Like Harvey says, if someone says, meet me at the shop, let's throw down, or if you're paired into a round at an event and you're told, hey, my opponent's playing Prime Brothers, what is a good place to expect the list to be? And that tells you two things. One of it falls into that mold, you roughly know what to expect. But also, if you look at the list and go, hold on, this is something completely different, then you need to take that extra step and think about play styles, what's coming out the back end of it. So let's go and have a little bit of a chat about offense.
Yeah, so I mean, I think in general, when we talk through lists on this channel, this is where we normally play, right? Like our preference is definitely on the more aggressive side of things. I mean, for the longest time, maybe mine was slightly more defensive, but with changes in the game, I think offense is becoming more powerful. So loosely speaking, an offensive army looks to spend very little of its kind of like point allotment on defensive abilities, preferably none, and looks to really, really maximize the kind of number of wounds you're doing per wound you have on the model, and basically just try and out-trade your opponent more than anything else, right? Like if you charge a unit and you wipe it out, then you don't take an attack back, and that means you didn't ever have to use your defense stat. But obviously these lists tend to then be also more fragile as a result. So if they get out mobilized also, then they can really struggle.
Yeah, I will say that when we were learning the game outright aggro with, we'll come on to talk about things like ambush, but aggro ambush was, for the longest time, I just thought the best way of playing the game. Ambushing things in, charging your opponents, one-tap cycling them, as you've said here, 1-0ing them, which just means wiping out the unit in a single activation, and just having the best possible trades. The game is more nuanced than that, but I do think that gets you 70% of the way there.
Yeah, for sure.
So it is a very effective play style, especially in a game. We always say this, especially in a game as lethal as OPR, but it's because there is that single dice roll to get the hit into defenses, which you can pump down to a 6-up quite easily, and then route someone with morale. So these can be quite effective strategies.
Yeah, and for each of these kind of like archetypes, I've listed a couple of example armies as well. At the end, we do have the full grid where we placed everything. But I think just for each of these, it's important to kind of like touch on what I view to be like the true like offense ones. Like if I had to pick probably the most offensive books, I would choose the ones on the screen for the most part. So yeah, for GDF, Dark Elf Raiders and Elven Jesters, this is basically no surprise for anyone. Now, obviously, Dark Elf Raiders, their army-wide, is a defensive one, right? Harassing, moving 3 inches after something. That's defensive in nature. Elven Jesters have army-wide evasive for the most part. So that's obviously a very defensive thing as well. So the important thing here is that offense doesn't need to be like 100% in on your offense, and you never ever take any defensive things. Obviously, army-wide, you don't get to choose. But for the most part, you're not investing so much into the defensive things, or the kind of like the ratio of how much you're investing into attack versus defense. Like attack greatly outweighs it. Yeah, and then Dow Union, another classic example, right? That between like good shot and targeting visor, they're all things that boost your offense. They don't touch your defense. So yeah, in a GDF world, if you've ever played against these three factions, you probably have a rough idea what we're talking about in terms of offense. And then for the AoF lovers out there, I've got Dark Elves again. No surprise here. Dark Elves traditionally tend to have high quality low defense, so that fits very neatly into the offense category. Ghostly Undead, for long time fans of the channel, you'll know that I'm a big Ghostly Undead fan, and with the recent changes to them, they're now actually a lot more aggressive than they used to be, thanks to feats. So feats are now once per game usage abilities, and they got Precision Feat, which gives them increased chance to hit. So between that and their innate teleporting now, they're actually a very, very aggressive army, which is a complete flip to the way they were played before, since Undead. And then finally, Wood Elves, which I know you're a big fan of, Wood Elves.
Love them.
They play the same game, right? They're very, very frail. But their army-wide kind of makes up for that by allowing for like tactics to avoid being hit. But in terms of aggression, in an AoF world, they're very, very hard to match, really, because they have stuff like A2 18-inch bows on 3F quality and such. So yeah, very, very aggressive, the Wood Elves. And because they have reduced charge range, they actually are more aggressive as a result. They can get closer to you and set up charges that other armies wouldn't be able to do. So yeah, you kind of get a feel for the kind of styles of armies we expect to be in the offense category.
Yeah. One of the things as well to kind of have a good indicator is just these armies have got quite low defense scores. Now that is something, again, talking to why we think offense is a really great place to start. What that does is that reduces the points cost of a single model. These armies as well are very good at, as Harvey mentioned earlier, cranking that maximum damage output to its limit. 4 damage output per 3 wounds if you're a tough 3, 2 damage output per 1 wound if you're tough 1, aspects like that. Now, an additional point that I want you all to think about once you've listened to this video, if you hear this all through and think, hold on, I want to understand it again, genuinely listen to what we say about playstyles and then come back to listen to everything we say at the start. In particular, to give you a good example, what Harvey just said in that last 3 minutes, because he was talking about aspects that you'll see in this offense category that then trickles through to playstyles later, talking about controlling playstyles, talking about pushing up the board, things like that will all link in. So this is a really good topic if you want to get into the crunch of how to analyze your opponent's armies and also optimize your builds. Just an extra little bit.
I think to note as well about these archetypes is, so we'll get onto playstyles later, which is more like how you do the things on the board.
Yeah.
The archetypes are more like what you bring, right? So they're the units that you assemble. So you could make a very, very aggressive custodian list. And you'll see in a second, custodians, I think I put it under the defense category. It certainly is on the grid. I don't know if it's one of the called out examples, but obviously, they're def 2 up, they have -1 AP and all this kind of stuff. They're clearly very statted around defense, but that doesn't stop you from building a very aggressive version of that list, right? You can forego stuff like regeneration aura for teleport aura and so on. So this isn't putting the armies in boxes as such. It's just saying where they kind of naturally play.
Yeah, 100%. And now let's move on to that category of defense. And this is one that I think we are valuing offense a lot more in 3.5 and in the current version of OPR. But I do find that when we're specifically looking at Grimdark Future, we do fall back on quite resilient armies more often than not. Talk us through what we mean when we're talking about a defensive archetype.
Yeah, so armies that kind of fit within this archetype, they're the armies that aren't in the armed race, basically, right? Offensive armies are constantly trying to out-offense each other, right? Out-mobilize each other, out-DPS each other, right? And they need to do that, right? Because if you get out-mobilized offense v offense matchup, it's probably going to be a bloodbath and your opponent's probably going to win. Whereas defense basically takes away that. It goes like, I'm not really interested in playing this game of you're more mobile than me or you're more aggressive than me. Instead, it goes like, I'm just going to focus on being defensive. And then therefore, all this commitment you put into additional mobility, well, I'm not playing for that game anyway, so it's basically wasted points, right? Like, it doesn't matter if you've got like a hyper mobile unit, if when you crash into me, I snap back and kill you.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's where kind of like defense is trying to play into it, right? And you'll find that for a lot of kind of like defensive style armies, they are also built with pretty good morale. So you'll find that, not only have you got like lots of little durable units, but you also have a lot of staying power, which is super important really for this playstyle, because the idea is, very aggressive things kind of fold under pressure. And if you can withstand their initial charge, then you can snap back and potentially win combats. And then, model for model, you're doing better off, right? You have much more durable units still alive, and they've kind of, you brunted their first attack, and then you can kind of counter strike. Now, as it stands in OPR, there aren't many lists that can do that, right? When we get to the grid later, you'll see that kind of like the left side of the grid, which is the defense section, is a little bit lighter than the right hand side of the grid. But I think in general, most things in OPR are relatively rounded.
I agree.
Which I haven't included a slide for, because I think you can kind of guess where that sits, right? It's between the two of them. It's neither a preference either way. So yeah, in terms of the examples I've pulled out here, I've already mentioned Custodian Brothers. Obviously, if you're playing GDF, they're like the epitome of very defensive army. Dwarf Guilds, it's an interesting one. Obviously, they're very defensive because of the sturdy, their rule. They also have Destructive Frenzy, which gives them plus to defense. But not traditionally, when you think of Custodian, you think like tough 3, heavily defensive. Dwarf Guilds are a much more kind of like swarm style, right? You can get a lot of models and they have a relatively high defense compared to their quality. Because of sturdy, you're often getting one more defense than you are offense, which is super
And because of slow, they're much more cost effective.
Yeah, exactly. Then next in the list, you have Robot Legions, which obviously is very similar to Custodian Brothers, very highly defensive, tends to be kind of slow units, can get quite a lot of bodies on the board, but very classic defensive thing. Obviously has a 6-up defense in their army-wide. So yeah, very classic defense. You can kind of see where I'm coming from here with this.
Yeah.
And then on the AoF side, the interesting thing about these kind of AoF versus GDF comparisons, right, is you'll look at the AoF style and you go like, actually, they're not as defensive as the ones on the left, and that's because GDF in general is more defensive, more elite, more polarized. So you'll look at some of these and go like, oh, that doesn't really fit in my head with where we're at, but it still does in my eyes. So yeah, we've got Dwarves again. No surprise here, these are just the AoF version of GDF. Sky City Dwarves here, which might be a relatively controversial one. But the idea is, you're slow, you're trying to whittle them down before you get to them, you're not moving at the board very much. So you're kind of using that like slow durableness of it, right? They tend to have very high toughness and defense transports, right? Which is something very rare in AoF, and they can be really hard to shift. So that kind of plays more into the defensive nature of them, because really transports are basically absent within AoF. And then finally Saurians, who you'll see later on are also a GDF one. They just didn't make the cut compared to the 3 on the left. Saurians are actually a very, very defensive army thanks to protection feat.
Yeah, exactly.
Which gives them a once per game 50-50 to ignore wounds. So yeah, very much fits into that kind of, I'm not that fussed if you really charge me because I have all this defensive prowess and I don't lose as much as you would do if you lost a charge. Defense almost does really well where you kind of are on the board where you just move everything up in a line and then you're threatening everything in their army and they're threatening everything in your army. Because if you're playing a defensive army, you care less about them charging you, but you still get the same value from charging them.
Yeah.
So this is where kind of defense can leverage that against more offense build, perhaps.
Yeah. And it goes to say that the army-wide rules that these armies have don't necessarily dictate which archetype they would fall into. It does come down to more than just that. It is the unit cards that you've got. And that's why, for example, Saurians come in here because they've got things like their Frog Mage, their Saurian Veteran, their Guardians, their Gators. These are all Def 3 up, which is less common in Age of Fantasy. Anyone who's thinking, hey, Eternal Wardens, sit back down. They're in the rounded category. Leave my chat now, because unfortunately they're not defensive, although I wish they were. Brilliant. Okay, so that is offense and that is defense from an archetypical point of view. As you mentioned, we're not going to go into the rounded aspects because that is the things that just fit in the middle, and that is most of OPR.
Yep.
An important one then is my favorite to talk about, which is the elite archetype. So I'm gonna just take this one, which is to say that this is where you are bringing fewer models that are more expensive. For anyone who's seen me at events and gone, hey, what are you playing? I will more often than not be very proud about having 10 or fewer models in my army. I think one of the last events we went to was Custodians. I brought Custodians. I think I had between 9 or 10 models in my army. It was great. I love it. It just gives me a really good feeling until someone with AP4 charges me. These do focus on having higher qualities for more reliable output, and also tied into that, the more reliable morale. Fearless comes in a big way here. They do tend to be quite defensive. They rely on fewer units to control each objective. They really lean into that aspect of, I just need one body on an objective to contest it. They will have more tough models in there, and what that means is the upside to having tough models is that you can take 2 wounds if you've got loads of tough 3 things and still keep your damage output for that model. Same with the tough 12. They are fully effective until you take that final wound, and that just means that they are more reliable. They are more likely to output damage across 3 or 4 rounds of a game. Grimdark Future, where do we expect to see that here? That is going to be in the Battle Brothers. They are, of course, your quality 3, defense 3. That means that 66% of your dice are going to be successful just on those flat stats. And with that, you're going to be quite expensive. The High Elf fleets, again, high quality, good mobility. They're not quite able to take a hit, which is why they're less likely to really be a defensive army, but they can be built that way. But using things like their shifters, their stingers, and their Revenants, is that the ones I want to say? The fast ones that you can get a Fear Mask in. These things are very reliably outputting good amounts of damage, but you do get fewer of them. And then, of course, we can't not say the Titan Lords. Archetypical elite army. I aspire one day to bring 5 models to an event, and that's my 2K list. The Titan Lords 100% fit this category. In Age of Fantasy, we go and look at the fatties again. Eternal Wardens, less said the better, really, because they and Ogres are just 2 armies rife with tough 3, tough 6 plus models in there. Their heroes upgrade to be in the ranks of tough 18 and 24. They just are putting out very expensive, high toughness bodies on the board. And we can't say Titan Lords without also saying Giant Tribes. They have no choice other than to do it. Big fan of the tough 9 models that came in 3.5, because what that has done is not just kept these as elite armies, but it's brought them into these 2K and 1500 play bands that we're typically talking about. And it means that these hyper elite armies for the Titan Lords and the Giant Tribes are very, very playable at the moment.
Yeah. I think a thing to note here as well is, obviously, if you look across this list, the AoF ones are all like tough 3, tough 6, tough 9 and stuff, right? And on the left, you've got Titan Lords, which is obviously tough 9, tough 12. But then High Elf Fleets and Battle Brothers, right? Like,
yeah,
elite is not the same as defensive. right? It's all about that kind of balance of points per model, right? So obviously tough 3 is a great step towards high cost per model. But even when you've got tough 1 armies, you can do the same thing, right? You can still look at them as if they're elite. And you'll find actually that elite is probably the most like polarized of the categories, right? Like a defensive elite army and an offensive elite army are actually massively on the ends of the spectrum.
Very
right?
different.
An elite aggressive army is super, super high stakes, right? So something like high elf fleets, which is relatively aggressive, is so frail, right? You're paying all these points for these models, you better get used to them, right? So it makes it really hard to play as an army. But then if you're going to look to the other side of elite, where it's perhaps the more defensive style, then the risks are way lower, right? So, don't just think, okay, elite, therefore high defense and high quality, though that is likely, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're defensive units as such, right? Because if you look at high elf fleets, they have really high quality, really expensive weapons. They'll have like 30-inch range guns and stuff. Like shifters with like 2 shots AP4, very very expensive unit, very very elite unit, but doesn't necessarily fill that kind of typical high cost, therefore high defense thing going on.
I'm just wondering, have we forgotten? No, okay, so. I was thinking here, one example, but we have got it in Rounded, is Soul Snatcher Cults. That's something where you've got 3 units that are qual 3 and very frail, but have quite good output. That's another one that can go there. But because of the rest of the list, we have got them in Rounded. But yeah, exactly that point that doesn't necessarily mean a defensive army. And that's why we've got the grid here. Brill. So the inverse of that is, we should have had him guest starring, is Warboss Fitz's favourite way of playing Swarm the board with a Horde. I will do adverts for anyone who wants a voiceover artist, drop a DM. Swarm the board with a Horde. Well done me, I'm a poet and I know it. Talk to us about the Horde. Don't say Loktar Ogar either.
Loktar Ogar to start off. But yeah, so Horde is basically just maximizing the number of wounds you've got on the board, right? It's the exact opposite of Elite, right? Where Elite, you're spending lots of points per wound. Horde, you're spending very little points per wound, right? The goal is just get a massive bodies on the board. And I've written here, the general strategy with Horde is to have so many wounds that your opponent can't really deal with them all, right? And that often comes with high activation count as well, right? If you've got 10 units and your opponent has 7, first of all, they just simply can't wipe out your army in one round if they're playing all melee or so. But also, they just might not have the damage output to be able to deal with this kind of stuff. So yeah, Horde is the exact opposite of Elite. And once again, you can have defensive Hordes and you can have aggressive Hordes, right? It comes down to this grid. So what have I got here? So GDF. Dwarf guilds, I put that as an example of a good Horde army. That may come as a surprise to some people. GDF in general, Hordes are less common, right? But I think Dwarf guilds is a really good example of like a defensive Horde playstyle. They are slightly more premium than perhaps other Hordes, but they focus, they have you can just fill the board full of warriors with regen auras and +1 defenses, and they can sit them in cover, and they become very aggressive, but still having loads and loads of bodies on the board. And that's thanks to Slow, right? Slow lets them field lots of bodies, it keeps that cost down. Then I've got Goblin Reclaimers. This should come as a surprise to literally nobody. If you've seen our review on it, it's impossible to actually build an elite army with Goblin Reclaimers.
Even
you can go try.
Even if you're all on the tanks, the walkers, the bug riders, you're still going to end up with a crap ton of bodies there.
Yeah, at some point you just go like, I've actually still got 1,000 points left. Especially if you see the army we built with it originally, right? We literally just went like 10 of those, 10 of those, 10 of those, 10 of those.
Yeah, exactly.
And then infected colonies. So infected colonies, obviously, they have so many different types of zombies built into them that you can very great. Even when you're going more elite with infected colonies, you can still bring like 60 bodies on the board just as zombies.
Easily.
Yeah, really, really easily. And then on the AoF side, these 3 should be, once again, no surprise to anyone here. So Halflings, another classic Horde army. Obviously, AoF is innately more Horde-y, right? You're much more likely to find Horde as a default in AoF because most armies have a 10-stack unit that they can fill with spears and fill that Horde role. But these are armies that really double down on it. So yeah, once again, Halflings, right? Like it's impossible to not to have 1 million bodies on the board with Halflings.
Yeah.
Ratmen, once again, like mechanics like reinforcement obviously play more into, that's very like a Horde style ability. And then Vampiric Undead, another kind of zombie army, right? That's that really, really cheap Def 6, Qual 5, body with Fearless, right? Like it's so classic Horde.
Yeah, these. I think the best way of thinking about how effective Horde can be is that when I bring Custodians, if I don't bring Blast, I cannot over the course of 4 turns, I think, wipe out a lot of these armies, which really goes to speak to the strength of Horde. Obviously, baked into OPR is this natural aspect that defense can never be reduced to less than a 6-up. Doesn't matter how much AP you bring. This isn't Warhammer or 40k. You always get that defense roll. And so that's where Horde can become really very effective. For example, here, Vampiric Undead, you stack that on with an extra 6-up save on top, and you're doing pretty damn well in terms of a resilient Horde army that people just can't kill. And then if you stack morale in there and so on,
exactly right. Like to use the Custodian example, right? Like a unit of 3 Custodian brothers is like 300 points or so, and they get 9 attacks, right? And they have quality 3, so they'll hit 6 of them. So if you charge them into a unit of zombies, they'll kill 6 zombies. Well, actually, they won't get killed because of the 6-up. They'll kill 5 zombies, and then 15 zombies attack back. Which it doesn't mean that you're going to lose that combat, right? But it does mean they might shake, but who cares, right? That's a 200-point unit of zombies, right? And your Custodian brothers have done basically nothing, right? And if they do well with their morale going further into the game, your Custodian brothers could spend all their charges on that 1 unit of zombies and never move them off the board, right? Yeah, and that's what Horde's really trying to play, right? Yeah, it's like, okay, I've gotten so elite and I've gone so defensive, I can't deal with a Horde play style. So that's where these armies tend to sit, right? It's really hard to break through 20 townsfolk for halflings, for example. It doesn't matter that they're 6/6s and throw rocks, right? Yeah. It's just a lot of wounds.
Yeah. And they can be really... I'm always scared of seeing a Horde army because I know that if I haven't brought enough Blast, I feel like a mug. So Horde can be very good. So what we've put on the screen for you now, if you're clicking on, big disclaimer, this is a rough guide. Don't come at me telling me, well, hey, I've got my Horde Blessed Sisters. Don't come at me as well. If you saw me in the recent online tournament playing the Horde Blessed Sisters, it works, but we put them there as an illustration of what to expect. Back to what Harvey said at the start, this is a bit of a shortcut, a heuristic for those who like that word. Let's kind of talk through the grids broadly. Age of Fantasy, starting off in the top left, we have got the defensive and the Horde combined category. Dwarves are an excellent point to put in here. As you've mentioned, you stack up tons of warriors. They've got +1 to defense from their sturdy. So that's a 3-up. If you put them in cover, that's a 2-up defense from shooting on the basic Mook unit. You can get to 2-up defense very easily with dwarves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you've got your Iron Warriors and all sorts of stuff like that. You can very, very easily build a very hard to move wall of dwarves there. So that's roughly why they're in the Horde category. And as I mentioned before, it's a slow thing, right? It's also worth noting, okay, this is what we were talking about before, right? About it being a grid. So you can see at the top, we've got defense, balance, offense. And on the left, we've got Horde rounded elite. So they've all roughly been placed in this category here.
Yeah. Moving on, we will continue to focus on the defensive side. We've got the Saurians and the Sky City Dwarves. We've already talked about that when we talked about the defensive archetype quite broadly, but these ones are now in the rounded comparative category, which with Saurians, you can go and look at their list and see very easily that they bring things to flash out those activations. They've got access to swarms, which is a really big tip into the rounded category. They've got some pretty good aggressive units. So it's something that, it can put them away from being... aggressive units, high quality units. It takes them away from being that elite category into the rounded category. And of course, then the Sky City Dwarves, they are defensive. They're closer to the Horde play style, I think, but because they've got those transports that are quite central to their ability to play the game, they're not fully into the Horde, they're not fully into the elite, and they're in that middle category of rounded. And then for the defensive elite ones, we have got the Eternal Wardens here. Yeah. I know, yeah. I know we have got them here. Because they don't...
Well,
They
as you
could be,
mentioned, you'd rather they be imbalanced, right?
I'd rather they
For
be
defensibility.
imbalanced.
Yeah. I think for me, one thing Eternal Wardens have that basically no other armies have in AoF is stuff like destroyers, right? It's that Def 2
I was going to say,
-1,
right?
right? And I think the intention behind these grids, right, is like what I said at the start, right? When you rock up to a game day and you hear someone's playing this army, what are you expecting? And I would say that most of the time, Eternal Wardens people are coming to because they think it's a defensive army. I think the best way of playing it isn't necessarily that, but I think their list supports that playstyle probably more so than other AoF stuff.
Yeah, so now take us through the balanced ones. Obviously, as you mentioned, this is where the bulk of OPR armies are going to sit.
Yeah, so I mean, anything balanced or rounded, you can kind of like draw that cross, and you can basically just go to the other one, right? So in this balance column in the middle, this top box is actually just Horde armies, right? Balance here has no real meaning. It means they've got no affinity defensive or offensive. So these are kind of true Horde ones that can play really any playstyle you want. So goblins, halflings, human empires, ratmen, vampiric undead. All of these tend to bring lots of models, lots of cheap models, but they can very easily go from one playstyle to another, right? So, for example, human empires, you could actually bring a load of shooting, but you're very likely to, it's still going to be cheap shooting. So you could go for slightly perhaps more aggressive with scouting fours with the short range pistolier guys. And that would be a very aggressive list. But then you could bring some really long range shooting and perhaps that'd be more defensive. But either way, you're going to end up with men on the board, right? It's very, very human empire classic. And then, goblins, halflings, ratmen, no surprise there. Same with vampiric undead. Then rounded balance. This is like basically you can take them anywhere you really want to. They don't have an affinity towards Horde. They don't have an affinity towards Elite. So if you were trying to force a Horde playstyle with them, it would be harder. And if you're trying to force an Elite playstyle with them, it'd be harder. But these really are your super, super generalists, your best following real list building principles of, bring a little bit of everything, keep it very well rounded. So Duchies of Vinci. I honestly don't think there is actually a more rounded list in the game than Duchies of Vinci. It's so like, if you go through the list, they've got like a little bit of everything, but at no point do you go like, wow, that thing looks really good, right?
Yeah.
They're like the ultimate in just like a little bit of everything. Then Havoc Dwarves. So obviously Havoc Dwarves are the slightly less offensive version, the slightly less defensive version of Dwarf Dwarves. Now, once again, you could go much more elite so you could go much more Horde, with Havoc Dwarves. But what Havoc Dwarves actually have is some really, really nice elite style units as well, between like Centaurs and Flamethrowers and
Centaurs
Flame
are
Elementals
really
and stuff
what I'm
like
thinking about then, yeah.
Yeah. So they kind of like push slightly more into that elite category. They have really expensive gunners and such like that. So while you may always be bringing a double stack of cultists, you're also probably going to be bringing, the high expensive tough six bulls and stuff like that. And I guess I'll let you talk about the next one here, Mummified Undead. I put Mummy Undead here because there wasn't enough space, but I think also another classic example of balanced and rounded.
Yeah, these guys I've spent a lot of time tinkering with recently. I think I mentioned it in a previous video. If I haven't, shame on me. If you want to play these as this hyper elite strategy, very much my cup of tea. Spam giants. They're 195 points for a tough 12. Fear 2, it doesn't matter what else is on that beat stick. And then they're Def 3. They've got Sphinxes. They've got like 2 more tough 12 things in there. A wonderful roster of tough 3 things to back it up with. So you can really go elite very nicely with them. I don't think that is the best way of playing it, though, because I think that the best way of playing Mummified Undead is with a rounded, balanced army. You probably cap out on your giants, 3 giants at 1,500 points. And then you bring in some of the scout cavalry, you double them up because they're insanely cheap for something that has a 19-inch charge range, 20-inch charge range with a musician. And then you really get a lot of mileage from mixing in that range of units there. And as for what they do on the board, they charge with plus 3-inch range, so they can be quite offensive and quite aggressive. And then if you're worried about them being too offensive and aggressive, I remind you, come back to those giants who are defense 3 up, tough 12, fear 2. They're going to accidentally win a few combats. and you feel great about it when you go, oh, I did 1 wound and I'm fair too, and so I win by 1. And they've got the ability to have that staying power.
Yeah, and actually, in AoF world, their shooting really isn't that bad either, right? Like AoF shooting isn't much to write home about, but they do get the extra range on that. They do have stuff like caskets, which are relatively good artillery. Skull catapults, decent spell casting list.
Like casting's
both
good, yeah.
mummies and skeleton warriors, so they can play a bit more horde style if they want to. Very, very rounded list. Ossified Undead. So obviously, Ossified Undead actually share the same army wide as Eternal Wardens, right? And so you go like, okay, well, why are Eternal Wardens defensive elite and why is Ossified more rounded? I think, well, first of all, Ossified, I think, get access to a 10-stack unit, which Eternal ones don't, which immediately brings them more balanced, right? Like, if you have access to that, then that's good. But Ossified are a really, really weird faction, right? I mean, first of all, they're kind of a not really complete faction. They're missing a few things. But of the things they do have, when you start looking, you find this really weird mix of like, okay, well, there's quite a lot of chaff to go around this army, despite them being 4/4s. But at the same time, there's also just like a bunch of like relatively elite monsters with cool tricks and stuff, which puts them in the middle between Horde and Elite in a very strange way. It's once again an army that uses slow to bring it kind of further away from Elite, right? Because the cost per wound goes down, right? Like, yes, a Def 4 is sounding quite elite in an AoF world, but slow then brings that more to the cost of like Def 5. And then you can kind of see that more towards rounders. So don't just be looking at stat lines. You need to think about costs per wound.
Yeah, there is quite a lot of depth to it. And just beyond those couple of points we've looked at.
Sure.
Sorry, keep going. Rift Demons. Where else do they sit?
Well, exactly where else they sit, right? Obviously, you get there's 4 different flavors of Rift Demons, and you could place War to more aggressive, and you could place Change towards more defensive. You could put Plague towards more Horde play style. What was even the last one? Lust, obviously more aggressive as well. But I still think even with the kind of like pushing of their faction wide, I don't think they go that far. Right, like old Lust Demons with Overload,
massively
you'd put
aggressive.
them all the way on the right. That was extremely aggressive, but that's now gone, which kind of pulls them back a bit more. So yeah, I think if you categorize them all, then they kind of all pull each other back into the middle where they kind of fit. But from like a unit selection playstyle, they're very, very, very rounded, right? Like you can't really go Horde with them, you can't really go Elite with them. The only way of going Elite is if you just pick just the big demons, and it's really hard to do that in a 1,500 point game. And still get units in, right? Like if you take 2 big demons, you've only got 500 points left to fill up potentially 5 activations, which is not going to happen. So I think most lists you end up with very, very rounded, nice lists from them.
Yeah. And the Shadow Stalkers, again, something that is just so rounded because you can go quite elite with your butchers and your tough 12 guys, but you've got this really good core of basic infantry that slot well into the defensive role because of their army-wide ability. That reduction of charges and shooting, as we talked about briefly with Wood Elves earlier. But then they can get some really nice output. You can go for a very Horde style. I think, is it Phantoms? Is that the one I'm thinking of? I'd have to remind myself.
Phantoms are the ones that throw spears.
The ones that throw spears. I'm thinking of something else. Ooh, quick, on the spot, Scourgers. That's it. With the Scourgers, because they're a block of 10, you can double them up to that 20, give them a banner, you're on a qual 4 up morale. They're actually quite an effective unit there, especially if you put a leader in. They can then just bump their morale that way. So they can become that kind of quite defensive Horde play style. And yeah, it's that point that you've made that they don't 100% go one way or another. They can fill out. And so they are very balanced around it.
Yeah, and some of the, obviously, like, I think you mentioned butchers already, but like some of their more elite monsters as well are actually quite scary. They've got like really good quality 3, Def 3. They've got that in a couple of different monsters. And obviously Tormentors, right, which is like the classic, like got to be one of the most aggressively statted units in AoF, right? It's
4/6s.
Scout, 4/6, 2 attacks with a limited attack, right? Amazing profile. But one thing also about Shadow Stalkers is they also get access to counterattack aura. So if you wanted to lean into a more defensive playstyle, you could bring stacks of spears, stacks of reapers with counterattack aura, and your opponent in AoF especially will go like, fuck, because you're probably getting a charge on them because you're army wide. But if you're not, then they're not happy about it either. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, very, very interesting.
They also have access to one of the very few tough 12 defense 2-up units in Age of Fantasy.
And I think it does have resistance as well.
Ascended Fiend, and it has it has melee evasion. That's it. That's another point, right? They've melee evasion scattered through the army as well. Things like that. And can you get resistance on it? No, someone else. It's the Blind Behemoth that gets resistance. That's it.
Yeah, that's the 3/3, right? So and then continue moving down. Elite balanced. Obviously, giant tribes. Right. I don't think that needs any more clarity. One thing about both giant tribes and Titan Lords, what I will say is because they're kind of Build-A-Bear, that it's no surprise they sit between defensive and offensive. If you want, you go like Plague Bound, or whatever it's called, and then they get all the defensive 6-ups like that, or you can go War for more aggression. Havoc Warriors, very similar to Rift Demons here, right? They're basically just more elite versions of Rift Demons, while Havoc can, stray more towards offense in certain styles, more towards defense with other styles. I think overall they sit roughly just in the elite category. Once again, you can go a more Horde play style, right? They do have access to Barbarians.
Yeah.
But I think most of the time, if you're expecting to play against Havoc, you're expecting to see double units of Havoc Warriors with double weapons, right? Which are very, very expensive for AoF. Absolute well beaters, but yeah, very expensive. And then High Elves should be no surprise here. High Elves, really classic elite army, right? They have very specialized units that do very specific things. And that bumps up the cost of those units. You'll very rarely see like a big horde of High Elves, really. You might have a lot of bodies, but they're going to be very expensive. And then Kingdom of Angels. This is actually the only one on this whole list that I had to really go dig into the army book for to like try and re-understand them, right?
I was going to say, someone's going to come down into the comments and say, what about the nuns? The nuns!
Well, exactly.
Because they can build a bit hoardy.
Yeah, and they can. And I think there's a Warboss Fitz video where he does like full nuns and stuff like that, right? And it's just a horde.
Sorry, that is what I'm referring to. Penitents and...
Yeah. But also, to throw another Warboss Fitz into the mix, he did a stream where he played Kingdom of Angels and used a bunch of their angels, right? And I think that's the true way you end up playing Kingdom of Angels, right? No surprise, right? You lean into that kind of angel playstyle because that's where their strongest units are. So if I was expecting to play Kingdom of Angels, I wouldn't expect to see the Horde, because I think if you were going to play Horde Kingdom of Angels, you might as well play Human Empire, because it's very similar styling, right? It's a bit like Rebel Guerrillas and Human Defense Force, right? Like, unless I'm using the very specific things that Kingdom of Angels get, i.e. angels, I'm probably not going in that route. But yeah.
Brill. And then to top out Age of Fantasy, we'll just touch on the offensive ones, but these again, very, very much what you'd expect to see here. Harvey's already mentioned Ghost of the Undead. Their removal of their previous rules and incarnation in the current version of the game puts them to be a hoardy offensive army. Lots of pushing for 2 attacks per 1 wound sort of style. They've some very good fast units, I think, in there, like lots of impacts, lots of A2 with the side Reapers, side Ghosts, is it?
Yep. Side Ghosts,
And then Orcs. Oh, what a wonderful horde offensive army you've got. Exploding sixes all over the shop. Tons of bodies. Tons of very, very effective damage output. Things like the speed feat aura to get them there that bit faster. If you take their ferocious boost aura, that means you're exploding hits on 1/3 of your attacks. Just fantastic all round. Into the rounded category for these, we've got the Beastmen, another very versatile, I think actually quite an underrepresented army book. I don't think we see enough Beastmen out in the wild because they are quite good, I think. They fit into that rounded category. Good elite infantry, good monsters, and also just the ability to go a bit wider if you want. Deep Sea Elves, again, another one that we don't see too much out and about. Definitely an offensive army to think about because they've got that 3-inch jump attached to all their moves. So quite like the Mummified Undead, they've got just a 15-inch charge on their base core units, which is very scary when you consider their giant octopus dude that can move forward and just at 15 inches. But also then if you are bringing, I can't remember how many ranged units they have. Is it 1 or 2? The ability with that little jump, though, makes them quite nice and aggressive for a ranged unit. So they fit in there. Volcanic Dwarves. We have got Dwarves in the offensive category. Their army-wide, just letting them deploy 9 inches up the board means that their slow matters a bit less. They get Strider quite readily, and then they just charge you with loads of A2 on their tough 1 dudes. Very nice to see.
Stat-wise as well, they're just very, very typical offense, aren't they? Basically, the whole army's
low
5.
defense.
You've got between Call 3 and Call 4 on basically every unit. They all have Furious, right? Like it all lines up very well.
I always overlook that they've all. Do they all have Furious?
They're all Furious, all Feel.
Not the Fire Elementals.
I don't know actually. I was checking. I feel like maybe they are just all Furious, but.
That would be, oh man, I'm sleeping on them. I'm sleeping on my short and angry boys.
Volcanic
Fire Elementals have Furious too.
Every time I come to Volcanic Dwarves, I'm always like that. Like that's just fun to play.
Yeah,
right. There's nothing about that list that isn't fun, right? Like there's a Volcanic Dwarf list later in this video, so Volcanic Dwarf fans stick around.
Yeah, and then the Wood Elves, another one that I dearly love. They are rounded because, again, they've just got such a deep roster to them. They've got the bugs if you want something with a bit more staying power. They've got the Tree Folk range in there, especially the Tree Men Brutes, is it? The tough 3 ones that I think are just really nice offensive units that are Qual 4, Defense 5, but they can get things like their Grounded Protection in there. Their army-wide keeps them alive longer than they should. And then you've got all of the Watch and the War Dancers and the Watch. What are they called? The A2
Forest Watch,
Qual 3 Forest Watch things. Yeah, they're all really good as well. Rounding this out into the very aggressive. Rounding this out into the elite category, we've got the Shiv Kingdoms. Holy crap! On a cracker, are they an offensive army that just blow you out the water? Now, interestingly, not a very high quality army, but when you consider that 50% of their attacks are on a quality 2 up. It's pretty damn reliable.
And the other 50% very likely 3 up because of Lance.
Thrust, exactly.
Thrust, as it is now, I think so. Shiv Kingdom is another one where like you could argue is perhaps more balanced, maybe even Horde if you perhaps more rounded, perhaps maybe even Horde, because they can lean into those things. But I think most of the time if we're building a Shiv Kingdoms list, we include lots of very elite cavalry, in the context of AoF, and stuff like foot squires, which are actually quite an elite foot infantry. So actually cost per tough is very high, but also damage per tough is extremely high on these units as well.
Really high and really reliable. And then the Dark Elves, another example of something where they don't have ragingly strong defensive stopping power and staying power, but they are very good at their damage output, very aggressive. And a dearly beloved army, Ogres, they're... what's it called? Devour rule? The Shred rule. Exploding ones just means that they're going to be quite aggressive. Stack that up with the fact that they can get their max battle val output on most of their units, especially their core warriors, for example, can go to A4, AP1. Means that they're going to do very well on the offense. Stack it in with a load of tough 3+, they're an elite army to boot. Fab. So that rounds out Age of Fantasy. Grimdark Future lovers, here's your moment to really seize the day. Talk us through the defensive armies, Harvey.
Yeah, so I talked to Dwarf Guilds before. Those reasons still stand. They were one of the ones featured in defensive. Machine Cults. Machine Cults are an interesting one, right? I think if Machine Cults had better statted things, like if they had more attacks on most of their things, they would probably be more balanced defensive. But you'll find that most of the time when you build out a list, you'll end up with things like Combat Walkers, right? Which are an amazing unit, right? They're quality 3, def 2. They've got regen, they've got stealth, right? They're really, really good. But they don't punch very hard. They've got 6 attacks, right? And obviously the Machine Cults army-wide of -1 to hit over certain ranges is innately very defensive. The whole army has Strider, which we would think is a very aggressive... Well, not the whole army, but a lot of the units have Strider, which you think would be a very aggressive thing, but actually it's not that aggressive in the way they use it, right? Like, I think they kind of using it more defensively to stop themselves getting killed. And I think also just Machine Cults in general, you kind of want to be leaning more into vehicles. And I think vehicles pushes you towards more defensive. And once again, also more of an inclination towards shooting through like ranges and stuff, that kind of push you in that direction. Now, obviously, like most of these lists, you can totally build very aggressive. You could go all shock priests in aircraft, right? And then that would be a very, very aggressive list. And you'd probably regret it. But yeah, if someone's bringing machine cults, I would expect, a bunch of like 24-inch range shooting vehicles and, keeping out of range for that 9-inch thing. So yeah.
Yeah.
Then you got Robot Legions, which I put under rounded defensive. Robot Legions is a very, very rounded army, right? Like I think if you start looking through it, like obviously it's slightly more elite, but once again, slow comes in to bring them back into that rounded category by bringing down the cost of units. You could absolutely go a big wide horde of Robot Legions if you wanted to. But in general, when you're building Robot Legions, I think you're taking a little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and you're kind of assembling something rather nice. And then defensive, obviously, right? I think the lowest defense they have in the army of the units you mostly take is 4, right? I think swarms obviously have less than that. But I think 4 is basically as low as it gets. Even their like little teleporting infiltrating guys, I think, are they 3/4?
The flayers?
Yeah.
They're 3/4. The infiltrating slow A2 guys, they're 3/4.
Which, if you ignored the quality and defense, you go like, this has got to be the most aggressively started thing in the army, and that still has their 4. They also have their 6 up for their army wide. And then defensive elite, Custodian Bros and Saurian Starhost. Now, once again, Saurian Starhost is one of these things where, like, yes, you could run a bunch of geckos, yes, you could run a bunch of warriors, but I think if you're running against Saurian Starhost, I would expect to come against stuff like frog mages in scary stacks and dinosaurs and
Ankylos.
Stuff like that, right? Which is very, very defensive. Lots of protection feat. I'd expect basically every unit in the army that can have protection feat to have it when they come across Saurian Starhost, which does drive the costs up.
Even the geckos, like the 10 stacks of teleporting shielded AP4 pistol geckos can be a real pain in the arse to shift.
And actually for that style of unit, very expensive because they've got AP4. So even on quality 5, right, that you can easily spend, I think it's like 260 points or something on a doubled up unit of geckos with teleport, which is actually quite a lot for something that's just quality 5. That's the defensive category.
Brill. So the balance category again is our thickest. It's not as thick as an Age of Fantasy. There are these points of what to expect in AoF and Grimdark Future. And as Harvey mentioned before, in Grimdark Future, armies are more polarized. You do get more dramatic outliers, higher defense with AP reduction in the Custodian Bros, higher damage output in things like your Orc Marauders, Elven Jesters. So that actually means that our balanced category is a bit thinner. But let's talk through it, and we'll get to the bottom of it before we can make some more broad brush comments like that. So we're going to start out with the balanced horde. As Harvey mentioned earlier, the Human Inquisition comes in here. They do feel like they want to be more elites. They are quite expensive per model, especially with their army-wide that lets them do those double activations. It is an expensive rule because it is powerful. The roster, though, it just isn't deep enough to keep them in that elite category. They've got a lot of basic units that just keep them in a more hoardy playstyle, and so we found that when you're building them out, if anything, I just find that I can't build the elite playstyle I want and have it be effective, so they do come more under the horde.
I think from a Human Inquisition, they kind of have this weird combo where, like, obviously the army wide is very, very powerful and points towards an aggressive army, more elite army, but then most of their units come actually with really, really crap weapons. And bad quality and stuff, right? So whilst like, you just give that guy a better gun, right? And then I think they would immediately shoot them away from the kind of horde. To be fair, of all the ones in this list, I think they're the least horde. I think just the fact that they kind of have such crap weaponry, it just pushes them back towards, well, I just need lots of bodies on the board, right? Like, I can't just run. I'm going to run lots of activations. I'm going to run lots of bodies.
Yeah. Then we've got the infected colonies. Again, as we mentioned, loads of zombies. There's not too much to say there. They can go quite aggressive. You can put them in flying transports. You can bring the tough 3 guys, crank the damage Valval output, maximize their shred army-wide. There are ways to really push them, but they're not as offensive as some of the other ones we can get. And they can be very defensive in their horde playstyle. But again, you do get a bit more from other armies.
Yeah, like in particular for infected colonies, both corrupted beasts and the support flamer units are extremely, extremely aggressive units, right? Like deadly on the corrupted beasts, and the flamethrowers are just amazing, very, very cheap units. So you can go very, very aggressive with those. But once again, I think you might expect some of that in a list, but you're not expecting a whole list based around it, which puts them into balance. And the same, like you could go really elite by bringing just corrupted beasts or whatever, but really, if you look across the list, you're most likely going to see 3 units of zombies in basically every infected colony list, and that drags it back down to Horde again.
It does. I'm actually, as we're talking through this, I'm thinking about what would put things into the Horde versus the elite category, which, as you mentioned, is things like quality. Adam Forge did do, I can't remember if it was in the UK Discord or the Don't Think Just Charge Discord, a brief summary of the average quality and defense of every army, every system. And that, you didn't see that? Oh, I'm going to have to find it. We'll see if we can dig it out. And if you want to see that, join our Discord. We'll try and get it pinned in there for anyone who's curious. But that brings me on to talking about Ratman clans and why they are in the Horde category, because they've got some wonderful elite units in there. I particularly love all of the ogres that we get, and you could just stack out an ogre army in there, get their tough 12 guys, their tanks, and it can be quite elite. But even with the ogres, they aren't pushing the 3/3s and the 3/2s of the world. They are still qual 4s and qual 3s. So when you build it out and you really try and go for that, you end up with a very Horde elite army. They do lend themselves more to the Horde style.
Hard to avoid it, yeah. And I
It's
think
hard
also
to avoid it.
You know, you're basically never going to find someone who plays Ratmans and doesn't like, scooping up 400 minis every turn. That's, if you can play something with a rat in the name, then you just love painting lots of minis that are grey.
Grey and brown. I mean, also, if you are doing that, it is a disservice to overlook the power of the reinforcement rule. It is so incredibly strong, because on 75 points is the Age of Fantasy comparison, but on a 120 point unit, just making it come back, playing against that, I don't want to waste an activation to kill something that you're going to be like, I actually kind of hope this morale check fails. Oh, I'm shaken. Take it off the board and redeploy it in a better position next turn. Such a good rule. So powerful. And then moving on to same comments as Human Inquisition, really, of just crap guns, crap output, so you've got no choice other than to build them Horde. Rebel Guerrillas, unfortunately, are in this category of being a balanced Horde.
Rebel Guerrillas have one really cool, unique thing, which is their Def 2 vehicles can all get fortified to get -1 AP, right? That's the one defining thing about them. And even that, it doesn't really bring them much out of the Horde category. You have to still go Horde. And they are put in balanced between defensive and offensive. Not because, unlike other armies, they can do both, but simply because they can do neither.
They can do neither.
Yeah. We're going to call them balanced. Really, the word is underpowered. If I could have yeeted them off the chart and put them in a bin somewhere, I would have done so.
Well, this is like
far too civilized.
This is the thing about Eternal Wardens being in defensive elite and just allowing it, right? Because you don't really want to push them into the balanced elite category because they don't quite meet the bar. And in the same vein, Rebel Guerrillas can't stray outside of this middle line. I'm really looking forward to the Rebel Guerrillas rework, hopefully coming later this year. Tano's talked
I'd like to see
about
more
it on
combo
the
stuff with
streams.
them, right? I'd really like to see more like I like the whole ambushing thing. I'd like to see them kind of get a mix of ambush and aggressive stuff. And I'd like to see them move towards that offensive category. I don't mind staying in Horde, but I'd like to see stuff like covered precision and stuff in their list, right? Really give that Rebel Guerrillas feeling.
Covered precision, ambush redeployment. I don't know what if you could give them the ability to have ambush redeployment buff, something completely unique. Pick a unit and give it a buff that is at the end of its activation it can use ambush redeployment, and then have it be an optional upgrade in there for them to have +2 AP or +1 AP on the turn that they come down. Then you're cooking with gas at this uppy, downy, nimble, in and out of terrain army. You keep the stat lines very much where they are because if it's going to be this tricksy army, you want it so that when you can get your hands on it, you crush it. Otherwise, it's just going to be like really annoying to play against. And make it this army that would feel like it is attacking you with guerrilla warfare. And
even like different
Gorilla
indie
and
buffs or something, right?
I can't even do. I don't have the ability to do it with Tamil's accent.
Guerrilla.
Yeah, I can't do that at all. But I mean, guerrilla warfare, like you talk about it like Vietnam, but also I want to see some guerrilla warfare as well.
Yeah, obviously, yes.
I didn't make the noise in my mouth there because otherwise it would have been clipped to fuck. Moving on down the balanced list into the balanced rounded Blessed Sisters. What an epitome of an army for being balanced rounded, really. They can push into the other categories. They can go really elite with an all-walker army. They can go really, really hoardey. They can push into, and they are very offensive, but they're not as offensive as some of the other ones, which is really what keeps them here.
You can cherry pick units to make them an aggressive army, but you'd probably be using 30% of your list. Yeah, it's the truth, right? And most of the time, you're not expecting to have to do that, right? So that brings them back towards balanced. I don't really think they have the tools to ever be justifiably defensive, right? Like the most defensive thing they've got, I guess, is the shrine. But
the shrine and the walkers.
But yeah, once again, it's not a great selection, is it? Really?
No, it's not. And then Eternal Dynasty, another very versatile army, I think, is a really good way of describing them. You can build them in loads of different ways. If you wanted to go more defensive, you're into the Onis and the Walkers, but exactly as you've just said, right? You find you're a few hundred points in and you're like, now I need to actually bring something else to make this list viable.
Yeah, and I think they are probably, towards the elite end of the rounded category. Yeah. But I think, still like that's mostly because it's GDF more than it is anything else, right? But like stuff like ninjas are obviously like slightly more elite infantry. They're missing some more punchy guns, which I think would make them really, really elite. And obviously Onis can get extremely expensive with like 24-inch A4 AP4 or whatever it is they get. So they can get very, very aggressive. But
yeah. Human Defense Force. I mean, this is an army you're very passionate about.
Yeah. I mean, I think Human Defense Force are like the epitome of balanced rounded, right? Like I think they have a little bit of everything. I think if you're not sure what you want to play, then come join us at the Human Defense Force, basically, right? Because you'll be able to slot your playstyle into the Human Defense Force in one way or another way. Obviously, they're not hyper in any directions, and you can argue that some of their lower quality might push us more towards Horde, but you can also just completely ignore all that stuff and go relatively elite with lots of tanks and lots of buffing and stuff like that. So I'm a huge fan of Human Defense Force. I think they're just a really, really solid, rounded, fun list to build with, and they don't really miss on many units. So yeah, if you're looking for a sign to play Human Defense Force your next event, this is it.
Sick minis too. Brilliant. And then yes, again we've got the Rift Demons, the Wormhole Demons, the same army, same comments apply, copy and paste.
Yep.
And then moving into the elites, we've got the Battle and the Havoc brothers and the Prime brothers. These three have all just rife with quality 3 throughout the army in nearly their entirety. They've got the Acolytes and the Scout units, the Pathfinders that are all the exception to the rule, but they are majoritively core 3 armies. High elf
once
fleets.
again, Havoc brothers especially, you could go really hoardy with lots of mutated brothers and that kind of stuff. But I think most of the time you'll play against people who have brought an APC and some Havoc brothers with upgraded guns and maybe a demon or something like that. So the chance of you playing against a very Horde style Havoc brother, I think, is less likely. But once again, the sub factions can move that around and stuff. But yeah, in general, expect elite when you think Havoc brothers.
There are exceptions to all of these rules. Then high elf fleets. This is something we've talked about. Elite. You've got lots of core 3 in the army, and lots of way of really you can find that building a high elf fleets list, you hit 1,800 points and you think, I've only got 25 wounds in this army, 30 wounds in this army. How have I done this one? Everything could be really expensive.
Yeah, and I think elemental protectors, I think.
Yeah.
And elemental strikers. I think the strikers are the ones that I'm thinking about. They're basically like a must-take within high elf fleets. They're the only way of getting some sort of durability in there. And they are very, very elite for what they are. They end up being 3/2s with shields, right? And that's their only way of really getting durability in the army. So, yeah, very,
and that's
very
the only morale mitigation units are the elementals. They've got Fearless. The elemental strikers, yes, it's the protectors have got the guns. The strikers are foot-slogging melee dudes.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it. Yes, absolutely. They are your only stopping power. And Titan Lords, which we've already talked about when we mentioned the giant tribes. Round this out, Harvey, with the most aggressive, the most smelly, the most offensive Grimdark Future ones.
Yeah, so to start off the top of the list, offensive Horde. Goblin Reclaimers up here, which you'll note goblins were in balanced Horde for AoF. I think Goblin Reclaimers kind of go up a little pip because I think to be honest, like their units are just more aggressive than Goblin ones, right? Lots of Goblin ones have A1, like Trolls cap out at 3 attacks. Whereas Goblin Reclaimers, basically everything gets to A2. They've got very, very aggressive scout units, so they can have instinctive on stuff, and instinctive is pretty good with them.
We haven't talked about instinctive.
Yeah, they get access to some nice deadly weapons as well, which are really, really annoying when combined with racial, and then they can be buried deep in units, and you just need to get a little bit spiky and you're good to go. Good shot on a lot of their units, obviously, is a very, very offensive ability that's missing from the goblins over in AoF. Orc Marauders here again. No surprise there, right? They're very, very similar to normal orcs in AoF, so you can basically copy paste them. Speed Feet is an extremely aggressive rule. 6-inch extra movement is completely wild. So yeah, that's a real stuff it in army. Jackals I put under offensive Horde. This may come as a bit of a surprise to some people. They do have the same army wide as goblins. And I think actually they have some really, really good ways of using the army wide as well. They have access to quite a lot of AP1 and AP2 and just various bits and bobs. And I think if you play with their precision markers as well, you very quickly see how you can make them really aggressive, right? Like all of a sudden you're buffing all your units to like 2-ups, right? Instead of the 4-ups and 5-ups they are by default. But I think obviously, and then like their dogs are really good for hyper aggression as well. There are a couple of units in Jackals where if you take them, you will go like, what was he talking about? Stuff like the Beast Gunners and stuff, you'll go like, why would I ever bother with that? But yeah, but Jackals between like precision markers and morale debuffs and stuff, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know how many people, including us, are sleeping on the power of precision markers. I think exactly as you say, right? The ability to push this Call 4, Call 5 army into the elite ranges of hissing on 3s and 2s. It's up there. There are some scary things you can do with Jackals, and as ever, Vultures are just their MVP unit.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also like Jackals, nothing about their army will ever give you any sort of defensive prowess, right? So all you can do is maximize against them and hope for the best, right? If they get charged, they're dying.
Yeah.
So then we have Alien Hives. Alien Hives are in the offensive category because you can get AP4 on every unit. There's really no other place to put them, despite their army-wide being +1 morale, despite them being able to run relatively like wide armies and stuff and have big monsters with high defense. These guys are firmly in the offensive category. They can't really play them defensively, right? Their most defensive unit is probably the Hive Lord. It has Fearless. It has a 2-up morale into 50-50. It's got regen, right? That's a very, very defensive unit. But even that is bringing 16 attacks for its 12 tough, right? Alien Hives are just a really, really great, solid army. But yeah, rounded in nature between Horde and Elite, because you can take it either way. You really can. And oftentimes you'll find it is a perfect mix of both, right? Most Alien Hives armies you'll play against will have like some casting, some monsters, some Horde elements, right? And it'll all come together. Then we've got my beloved Dao Union. Like I mentioned this before, right? Very, very classic offense, right? Good shot plus targeting visor pushes them up to 3-up plus marking, push them to 2-up, and all of a sudden you've got like a 2/5 effectively. Very, very, very aggressive. Will absolutely fold the second you come near them. And uses very classic offensive tools to make up for that, right? So minus wants to hit through stealth, minus the charge range, right? These are things that if you look on the AoF side, you'll see quite a lot in some of the offensive factions, right? They're like really short and cheap ways of kind of giving yourself some defensive power, but doesn't cost too much that you be upset about it. And can be very, very like game-changing abilities. Soul Snatchers, once again, this is an army that doesn't really have a way of defending itself. Its best thing is just to walk up the board towards you, very similar to Volcanic Dwarves. It's got some interesting like tricks in it, but most of the time you're building for aggression with these guys. You're pushing things up the board and you're trying to push your opponent back before they get to you. And lots of scout and stuff like that. Well, not lots of scout, but access to scout in a plus 9-inch thing is very, very powerful. And then finally, elite offensive. This category might as well just be called the glass cannons, really. So yeah, Dark Elf Raiders and Elven Jesters are... When I started coming up with this video idea, I mentioned it a couple of times on the channel, but I've played a little bit like competitive Pokemon before, and one of the categories they have there is called Hyper Offense, right? And it's the idea that you just bring 6 Pokemon that could basically sweep your opponent's team, and you say like, deal with this, deal with this, deal with this, deal with this. And if they do, then it's a really quick game. And if they don't, you win the game. And that's what Dark Elf Raiders and Elven Jesters really reminds me of. They are so fragile. But if your opponent can't deal with it or can't counter what you're doing, and can't weather the storm, which is really hard to do anyway because they're so aggressively statted, then you're going to immediately fold and be like, right, well, on to the next game. So, yeah, there shouldn't need too much explanation here. Dark Elf Raiders and Elven Jesters for offense and elite. But yeah.
It's quite interesting when we look at it in this sort of way of the bulk in the middle, as we've talked about, most armies are rounded and most things could fit into that. The polarizing difference in Grimdark Future, that you have much fewer in that balanced category, and kind of the differences that you see between Grimdark Future and Age of Fantasy. I've just found that comment from Adam in OPR General on the Discord. Overall, in Grimdark Future, the average quality is 3.8, the average defense is 4, and the average unit size is 4.3. So 3.8 and 4 in Grimdark Future. In Age of Fantasy, the average quality is 4.1 and the average defense is 4.5. And the average unit size is 4.9. So we would expect then to see a heavier push into the elite category for Age of Fantasy. For Grimdark Future, and a heavy push into the Horde category. But we still see a lot of Horde in Grimdark Future. So it's some of these things that we see are quite interesting from that broader perspective. The thing I think I really want to underline as we move away from these grids is the points that are pushing these armies into their categories, into the Horde, into the offensive, defensive, tiny percentage points.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
The
and once again, like, you know, someone will be in the comments being like, here's my hyper aggressive machine cults elite list.
I built one the other day, yeah.
And I'll go, yeah, brilliant, cool, nice, love it. Right? Yeah. These are not like walls put up around these armies that mean these things. It just means that, like I said, you know, you go to play a game on a Saturday, you expect to see roughly what these boxes tell you.
If anyone has got a really defensive Elven Jesters list, I'm all for hearing it, but I don't think that's going to be the best way that they play, just trying to have a bit of stopping power.
Yeah, someone sent me an elite Jackals defensive list, and I'd love to see what you've come up with.
3 long necks. That's all we've got.
Yeah.
Brill. So that is rounding out our thoughts on the actual archetype perspective. So what do you do with it? How do you apply your archetypes to your own game plan? Let's go and have a little bit of a look at some play styles. So this is more focused on how the army is planning to win. Let's make sure I actually get the slide up. There we go. How the army is going to plan on winning the game. These here in front of you are just examples, but we think they're pretty common examples that you'll see. As well, it doesn't necessarily mean that someone has come to their army list with this in mind. These things can just, you've just built a list of cool shit, quite frankly, and then you go, I'm going to play it like this. But it's a nice way of thinking, almost reverse engineering your list at the back end. Once you built your cool list and you're thinking, how do I deploy it in the best way? Or you look at your opponents and you think, how are they going to deploy it in the best way? These playstyles are really good pillars of indication.
Yeah, where the previous part of this video might be more useful to people of all different levels, right? Either as just like an interesting thing to talk about, or some guidance towards picking the right list for them. Playstyles are a lot more generic. Now, some playstyles are only viable within certain lists, but as mentioned, you can kind of force playstyles onto a list as well and make it what you want, as long as it has some of the parts you need.
Yeah.
So yeah, where the archetypes are more about what the list has, this is more about how you're running your specific list. I guess what the book has versus how you're running your list. So yeah, it's more about how you're playing it on the board. So I've thrown together just some examples here. So yeah, positional counterplay. This is a kind of classic one. This is just a general broad category that embraces anything that uses high mobility to get to certain places on the board and can outmaneuver you. So all ambush would fall under this, heavy scout would fall under this, transport, aircraft. All of these are things that you would find in a list that it's trying to outmaneuver you. I've written at the bottom here as well, like these playstyles, a list can kind of like buy into them as much as it wants to, or as little as it wants to, right? So you might be like, I want to include some positional counterplay in my list, and I'll have a core of my list that can do that, but the rest of my list isn't so interested in that. Or you'll go, I want this whole list's focus to be positional counterplay.
Yeah. Also, these playstyles aren't exclusive, so positional counterplay and shove-in. I talked earlier about aggressive ambush strategies is how I started out playing the game very heavily. I still love an aggressive shove-in ambush strategy. I will never forget after an event, one of the guys at the event coming up and being like, "Hey, how are your games going?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm winning. I haven't lost. I'm doing really well." And he said to me, he was like, "It just seems like you're spending a lot of time just chatting to your opponent. You're just stood next to them having a conversation about the game." And I went, "Oh no, it's because I ambushed everything onto his side of the board, and that's just now my side of the board. So I'm just playing stood next to my opponent." And it was just a way that I like to play. But it is two of these play styles. They aren't exclusive. They do a lot of things together.
And also, obviously, this is not a comprehensive list of them, right? These are just some examples
100%.
to kind of get in your head while you're thinking about lists and thinking about maybe some new ideas for them. So then we've got Flank Overload. So Flank Overload is a playstyle very classically defined by very like top-heavy lists, right? So you have a number of key, really, really powerful pieces that you're trying to put on one side of the board, and then you put a bunch of crap stuff on the other side of the board, and you go like, I'm going to win this side, and I'm going to draw this side. Which obviously is you can win games off that, right?
Demons,
then we've got
alien
Shove-In.
hives, good examples there.
Shove-In. So this is very classically seen with melee lists, but you can also do it with kind of scout, short range shooting and stuff. But the idea is basically you're looking to move as far forward as possible in the first round or two, to try and stop your opponent from coming off their line, basically. And if they can't advance forwards, then they're going to find contesting objectives much harder. And if they like almost wipe out a unit, that unit that you've got can then run backwards past your units, which makes it very hard to kill because you've kind of ring fenced them off. You'll see like a lot of very aggressive like tabling lists tend to have like a shove-it-in style play.
Yeah.
Slow-Roll is the alternative to Shove-In. So this is kind of like tends to be very shooting heavy, can be caster heavy, or just very evasive almost. So stuff like aircraft, right? Like you can play like a slow roll thing with aircraft where you make the most of your aircraft before you advance your troops. But the idea is you're trying to whittle your opponent down before you get to them and slowly move onto the board, playing more for kind of round 4 captures than early captures.
Yeah.
Round 2 Go.
I think just to talk about Shove-In and Slow-Roll, thinking about cross-applying the two aspects of this video and why it's so good to talk about the two of them together, your Shove-In style, this is where we're looking at those offensive armies. This is where we're looking at the jackals, the ones who are trying to pressure your opponent really aggressively and early. Whereas the slow roll, you need to have the defensive stats to them. We'll come on to some of the lists that you've designed in a minute, but I think the Grimdark Future one is a perfect example of a defensive army which does the slow roll very well because it is defensive.
So they got Round Two Go. This is a bit more of a niche playstyle, but caster and ambush heavy tends to be kind of Round Two Go stuff. So the idea is you're basically just like front loading everything you've got into round 2. This is different from positional counterplay because the intention behind ambush, while you're still using it as positional counterplay, it's more about keeping your guys so they can't be charged than it is about like outmaneuvering your opponent to capture objectives. Very much Round 2 Go tends to be, I put all my stuff kind of in the middle and I do everything to try and wipe your army out. Whereas positional counterplay is like, oh, I can allot these resources here, and then by the end of round 4, I will have captured these 2, these ones will be drawn. And obviously, you can have a combination of the two of them. But yeah, Round 2 Go is very classically a bunch of casters in ambush. They come down, they blow all their tokens and everything, do a big charge, try and get a bit of momentum swing, and then they keep doing that for the remainder of round 2. And normally you snowball a victory off that, or you eat shit and die. And then finally, control. So this is something that's relatively new to the game. We didn't really have the opportunity to control things before. But it was again relatively niche, but mind control effects on difficult terrain. Before now, we've not really had a way of interacting with these rules. Obviously, mind control did exist in the game before, but it's slightly more prevalent now. And difficult terrain as well is a debuff that we've not really seen before. So you might see that in like a Plague Demons list, right? Bring a lot of difficult terrain, try and control the board through that, reduce the mobility, put the objectives far apart. And obviously, depending on what playstyle you're playing here, and what playstyles maybe your list has in them, you will deploy objectives and such differently as well, right? If you're interested in more like objective deploying stuff, we do have a video about that on the channel. You can go check out the playlist for Mastering the Game. It's in there, and you'll see us kind of reference some stuff here in that. So that's just some example playstyles that we pulled together. And on absolutely. The next slide, we've got some example lists as well of each of these playstyles.
Yeah. So for those of you thinking, I'm going to go and try some, and then let's compare. This is the time to pause the video, get a cup of tea, get your biscuits and gravy, build a list, and come back and see if you've got a similar sort of theme to what we're putting out here. These are not the be-all and ends-all. There is so much range that you can do, but let's go on to some examples. Now, Harvey here is the diligent preparer. I just rock up and blab. He does all the hard work. And he's done some lists that are going to be in this presentation. If you're interested in getting the links to these, join us in the Discord. And on your way, while you're down there and you're clicking to find it, please subscribe to the channel. Give the video a thumbs up. Yep. It helps us a ton. So let's go and have a look at some of these lists. So we're going to give you one Grimdark Future, one Age of Fantasy list about the positional counterplay, and then all those other play styles. Starting out with one of your favorites, something that you're so excited about for the longest time, but we don't play enough just base OPR events for you to actually deploy the dwarves. Oh, yeah. What's this positional counterplay dwarf list?
So the most kind of classic positional counterplay style list is like the most true to just all I'm interested in is positional counterplay is full ambush, right? Nothing in here is like super aggressive, right? Ooh.
I think if I can just like sum this up, it's here. So, here we go. This is what we're trying to do.
Yeah. So yeah, this is cramming everything inside assault drills, and it's ramming into your opponent. Now the key thing to note here is this is quite an aggressive list, right? But really it's more a resource allotment thing than it is about destroying your opponent. You have 2 assault drills, and inside the assault drills you've got elites, and the idea is you take the assault drills with the elites inside them, and you charge those things, and you pour out, and you deal with the threats that they can deal with. So it's about going like, okay, what can an assault drill full of elites deal with, and therefore I'll put that in their place there. And then you've got Power Suit Champion, Wisdom Power Suit Guards, high AP, come down, very hard to move thanks to Sturdy, Fortified, Def 3, right? That can very easily be a unit you put down, and it doesn't leave the board, so you can therefore allot that to one objective, and perhaps it can at least contest it, or depending on what they put there, maybe even wipe out the unit it's attacking. Miners, very aggressive unit, lots of AP2 shots, perfect for going like, right, this is something that I can't deal with necessarily with my other units. I'm going to stick down my one 10 miners, try and just detonate the unit there. If that works, I get my Destructive Frenzy. I then start to see my def go up to 4, maybe 3 up with Sturdy, and then all of a sudden I've got a nice objective holder. But it's about identifying, okay, what can the miners deal with? Because if they can eliminate a unit and start to get that rolling, then they feel really good about it. And then finally, just a naked dwarf champion. It's a Harvey list, of course it is. This guy has Infiltrate, which is a new thing he can now get. He used to only be able to get Jetpack's version of this, which is basically irrelevant. It means you can charge, I guess, but it's a thing you can get. So this guy is just caster 2. You can see there's some elements here of that kind of like round 2 go thing, but the way you're using this guy is perhaps not round 2 go, right? You might bring him down round 2, or you might bring him down round 3 as an annoying capture an objective on round 4 player. Caster, obviously, when you come into round 3, you've got your full caster token, so you can come down and apply some pretty decent spells, like 4 hits AP1 and Quake's pretty good, some blast spells, 1 hit AP4, stuff like that. The Deceleration Rune is absolutely crippling into final rounds as well. Absolutely.
Don't sleep on that. Just having one of these caster 2s coming into round 3, and you can just disable your opponent's plan on a 2-up. 3 units getting slow is very, very powerful.
Yeah, you can just do some measuring and go like, oh, you actually can't reach that point now. Brilliant, I'll do that.
Yeah.
And obviously, once you've deployed all your other stuff and done your positional advantage stuff, sometimes you need to just step in with a unit and just go like, oh, actually, I missed a bit. I need to fix that problem. And Caster's really good at that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my GDF positional counter playlist.
And on to the Age of Fantasy one, we've got the Havoc Warriors. This is 1,500 points, right? Worth clarifying.
Yeah.
The Grimdark Future ones are 2,000. The Age of Fantasy 1,500.
Yeah, so this is base Havoc Warriors. So there's 2 new units here that weren't there before, I'm pretty sure. Barbarian Hunters, I believe, are new. And Havoc Soulspawn, I believe, are new.
Yeah.
But what it means is you can actually have a full scout list, which is really nice. So yeah, you won't deploy any of this stuff, your opponent deploy everything, and you're using that kind of positional advantage to take advantage of that. Now this is more aggressive than the Dwarf list, right? You probably do want to be stacking heavily on one side of the board and just like bullying 1,000 points with 2,000 points. And obviously Havoc get access to scout auras as well, so that you could actually do this in many, many different ways. So for here, I've just gone like, okay, well, Drake Centaurs are a really good source of AP because Havoc Bound gives +1 AP, so that's actually a nice big AP4/AP3 stack. And then we've got lots of impact on the Horsemen for dealing with Jaff, and the Barbarian Hunters have Slam, so they're kind of like secretly quite potent. And then Havoc Soulspawn, high number of attacks, low AP, once again, good for killing Jaff. But you can see how this would play, right? Your whole strategy and how you're going to win the game is based entirely on how you deploy your scouts, right? So you're going for that early positional advantage and going like, well, if I can win off the back of that, then that's really good. But otherwise, this list isn't that scary, right? Like it's not, if you scan across the units, if you got rid of scout, you'd be like, this is not a very good list. But the fact that you can deploy your stuff exactly where it needs to be is a huge, huge advantage.
Saying to your opponent,
very
hey, it's
interesting.
deployment, put down all your army, I'll do mine next. Massive. Can be really
and a real opportunity for your opponent to blunder as well. Some people will see like full ambush and full scout and go like, I'm going to put all my guys together, which seems like a really good idea depending on where the objectives are, right?
Yeah.
If the objectives are spread out and you put your army in the middle, you then might turn your positional advantage list into a Shove-It-In list where you just, okay, well, if you're going to deploy there, I'm going to surround you for the first 2 rounds, capture all the other points, and there's just no chance for you anymore.
Yeah. Very good. Let's go on to the flank overload strategies. I spoiled it when I said alien hives, because who doesn't love 2 hive lords and 3 hive swarms? Just honestly, bin the rest of these off. This is such a typical way to start a flank overload list, and this is also very versatile, very flexible, and can play the rest of the game very effectively. Talk us through your thinking.
Yeah, so a couple of things about flank overload. One, obviously, you don't want to have to show your hand early. So having like throwaway units like the Rapacious Beast, you deploy that first in the middle of the board, that could go anywhere. And then you can start trickling in things like Hive Swarms, maybe in the middle of the board, maybe on the edge of the board. Support Grunts, obviously the same thing. You just whack them in the middle of the board. They'll have good presence. But the goal here is basically to end up with 2 Hive Lords on one edge of the board and then a bunch of annoying shit on the other side of the board. And yeah, stuff like the Synapse Tyrant can support either side, so once again, very flexible. And you kind of out-deploy your opponent, so you get this flank advantage. You take one flank with your big 2 scary Hive Lords, which can basically kill anything in the game. Very, very hard to move. Regen, like I mentioned before, regen 2 up morale into a 4 up morale. They've got rapid charge, so they move fast, high number of AP, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then the rest of your units in the list are literally just there to annoy the points. So Assault Grunts are really, really good at capturing points. They've got fast and strider, so they can nip onto points from basically anywhere. The AP on the Serrated Claws keeps them in the game the whole time. They will always be able to threaten things, right? Like they can't just move a tank onto the point and hope to live.
Yeah.
Because you're coming in with 4 AP4 attacks, they got to consider that. Hive Swarms, it's just a dirt cheap unit. Like the perfect decapper, right?
Good.
Like, yeah, no fast, but they do have strider. But yeah, 70 points. With Hive Bond, it's actually a 4 up morale, which is a 50-50 for a 70-point unit. It's pretty damn decent. They're not going to really kill much, but they could kill chaff, right? Like Bane is a decent thing to have against chaff. So you can actually win combats there. And because they're tough 3, you need to kill 6 wounds worth of models before you can trigger a morale check on them, which is a decent chunk. So yeah, on average, you need to hit them 7 times before you do morale, which is not super, super easy for every unit to do.
Yeah.
And there's a 50-50 chance they succeed. And then, yeah, as mentioned, Rapacious Beast is really, really good for this style of play because it lets you support where you need to, right? Like if you're going for a flank overload, you're like, okay, well, I'm probably going to win the right-hand side. But what if, as the game goes on, you go like, oh, actually, I need kind of like more support over there, where you can very quickly bring the Rapacious Beast over and do stuff on that side of the board. Which is nice because it can just bounce back and do stuff. There was originally, I had the Spore version of the Rapacious Beast in this list, which is obviously a very, very good thing to have in a flank overload list as well, because spawning spores on an objective on the last round is almost uncounterable when you've got lots of activations, and it's a really nice way of just like ensuring that you do get the decap, but opted for a slightly wider list.
Very good. Next up is the Mummified Undead for our flank overload. Very pleased to see these here. We have, of course, got 2 skeleton giants. Harvey and I had a little bit of a chat about this. He wanted to make sure that I was wrong on 2 fronts this video. He upgraded it. He took their A12 AP nothing weapon to AA AP1, so they're a crippling 200 points.
Oh yeah,
nice and spicy.
Really breaking the bank. So this is very similar to the Alien Hives list, but a bit of AoF flavor on it, I guess. You've got 3 big, scary, tough 12 dudes who are going to win against lots of matchups. For one flank, and then you've got Scarab Swarms and Mummies for the other flank. And then just to make it slightly different to the Alien Hives one, I've then included actually an ambush unit in the middle. So a Royal Champion on Snake Riders with Snake Riders. And the idea is not only do they have difficult terrain debuff, which can be very disruptive, and actually has a really long range and doesn't require line of sight, so you can affect both sides of the board, but also they're coming in with Caster. So once again, trying to go for that, like, I need to be able to like fix problems that I might not have realized were going to be there, and I'll bring this guy in, he comes in with Caster. They've got a good casting list, and he can solve some of the problems, and he's Caster 3 as well, so he comes down this is a round 2 ambush more than a round 3 one, like we saw with the Dwarf list.
It's a round 2 ambush with a 19-inch charge.
Yep.
Which is,
but you're basically saying to your opponent, like, good luck with the 36 wounds I've got there. 24 of them being Def 3 and 12 of them being Def 2 with Fortified is very hard to like deal with. Trying to like overstretch their armies, and especially if you've managed to stall out some early activations, which this list doesn't do as well as the other one. But you could potentially have their counter to this could be on the other side of the board. Which would be very rough for them, especially with AoF. Generally, you're engaging round 2, so if you come down with your Royal Champion in round 2 and slap a difficult terrain debuff on their thing that's trying to counter your big 3 big guys, then it's going to really suck for that unit, because then it has to get charged.
As well, that you've got difficult terrain in the casting list. You can do it on 2 different units.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Like really fuck with their day.
Yeah.
The thing that's crippling about this whole process is I'm looking at these and I'm like, fuck, I want to try that list. I want to try that list. I want to try that list. So there are our 2 flank overload ones for you. Now we're going to have a look at the Shove-In. Let's go for Grimdark Future again first. Stick to the pattern. Now, yeah, I saw this list, and I'm not surprised by the triple unit of Berserkers with Speed Feat Aura. We are a big fan of the Berserkers. But then I saw that the veterans were the only ones without Speed Feat or Scout, and I hadn't even seen what's over here. I was looking at them and going, oh man, they really could do with the transport. And then I looked at the last unit.
Oh yeah. So yeah, we've got the classic truck. Love to see a truck. So yeah, this thing's got speed boost, it's got fast, it's got strider. It's just an ideal transport. It's really going to be zooming in there. I gave it rending in melee because I thought it kind of supported the rest of the army in an interesting way. You don't super need it for the veterans, but it does increase their deadliness against things with regen quite significantly.
It really does, yeah.
But yeah, no surprise here. Once again, very, very classic kind of Shove-In list. You're pushing things up the board. You're using Scout to hold some place before the things get there, and then you'll use your truck to deal with certain problems. It may be the case that this list is a little bit short on AP, but given your strategy is Shove-In, you don't always need to be killing the things. You just need to make sure they can't then win the rest of the game. So this can actually do that very, very handily, especially if some of your things start to get away. Don't underestimate regen on a lot of these units, right? They'll really keep in the game fighting for longer than they would be otherwise. So yeah, another very simple but clear strategy in mind.
Absolutely. The Berserkers as well are just so accidentally tanky, which is great. 6 ups into 6
into 5 is It's something like, if they're not rending, it's the equivalent of like having a 4 up or a 3.5 up or something like that.
Yeah.
It's pretty scary.
It's pretty scary. And then for the fancy list, our short and angry hairy men, volcanic dwarves. Very pleased to see these here. a really interesting interaction between their army-wide rule and their units is that we've got the Auric Marksman, all with 12-inch guns, massive output, just deploying 9 inches up the board, fantastic for them. And then also the Volcanic Berserkers, all having access to Strider Aura, just means that they are constantly effective in their charges.
Oh yeah, so the Berserkers are an amazing unit, right? So they're obviously quality 4 is not amazing, right? In the context of like reliability, but in AoF it's pretty good. They do have Furious. They are slow, but because you've deployed 9 inches at the board, you're already controlling quite a lot of space. 9 inches plus the 8-inch charge is 17 inches. So really your opponent's only got like, what is that? 3 plus 4, 7 inches to play with. But so you can control a lot of space, right? And then already kind of shoving them in because they don't want to run towards these guys. Because what Volcanic Berserkers do is kill basically everything. They've got a lot of basic attacks. If anything is, if anything's susceptible to melee Slayer, then that's even more troublesome, right? Like 20 attacks on AP2 is going to kill a lot of stuff. And you have 3 of these guys. They have Granite Reinforcement as well, which brings them actually up to a 4 defense, which makes them a lot tankier than you think they would be. And then, as you said, the Auric Marksman is a very, very aggressive unit. It's a large number of attacks and plays well into the Shove-It-In playstyle because it's got such a large area to control. Really keeps your opponent further back than they would do normally because they might want to try and set up charges against you, but your Auric Marksman can then shoot them when they get in range, which is good for a list like this. And then finally, the Magma Drakes. As I mentioned before, like Shove-It-In doesn't necessarily mean wipe out your opponent, and that's kind of what the Magma Drake does. It's going to be a large model. You're going to be able to place it right in front of them. It can affect multiple units, which is quite nice, but it's just very durable, right? It's Def 3, it's got regen, it's got fear, right? It's just a really nice unit for walking towards your opponent and hopefully staying there for a decent amount of time.
Again, another army I just want to play. More dragons. Brilliant stuff. Thank you. And then let's go on to our slow roll. So we've had the aggressive ones. Now let's have a look at the ones that might be a bit more defensive. And I think we've broken the grid here as well, especially in fantasy ones. So let's go and have a look first at the Grimdark Future before we go on to that. Robot Legions.
Yeah, so Robot Legions, slow roll just makes sense with them, right? What they've got access to is a load of really decent shooting. They're really durable. They like playing that game where they just move slowly at the board and do stuff. But they also have access to some pretty decent kind of like late game capturing pieces in hover bikes and doom tanks, right?
Love hover bikes.
Yeah, so hover bikes more so than doom tanks because they've got fast. But you can do a lot of like shooting with them, and then you can double move onto a point last round, right? Which suits the slow roll playstyle really well because sometimes you will have objectives on their side of the board and you have to get to them. And also your warriors are literally never getting there.
Yeah.
So that's really nice. Stuff like Spider Walkers are really nice as well because they don't mind 6-inch moving up the board every turn, which is very kind of slow roll style. Because they have a decent number of melee attacks. They have self-repair, they have Def 2, they have fear. So they can actually just move forwards, and if they get charged, they're not completely screwed, and they threaten a lot of area and just slowly kind of roll into your enemy. Same with the Doom Tank, really. Doom Tank's just a really efficient piece, right? Like it's only tough 9, but it has 12 attacks worth of damage. So that's really nice to see. Can help wipe out the kind of more elite blobs. And then if it needs to, it can move on to a point with Strider, which is good. And then the Robot Lord, I just had some points spare. He's a naked hero, so he belongs in the list. But for a slow roll army, this is kind of like the one thing that kind of comes away from slow roll, but it kind of rounds the list in quite a nice way. Because you want your whole army to be doing stuff every turn, right? You want them to be moving forwards and shooting, right? Trying to make it to those points for round 4. So obviously the enemy of slow roll can be being shoved in, right? So you need to be able to move forwards and do stuff. And a robot law is actually really good for this list because it's something that won't be moving 4 inches, moving 6 inches forwards and shooting. It's something that can move 12 inches. Oh, sorry, 8 inches. It's slow, but
8 inches. It is still slow.
It can move its full movement forwards and just try and cap objectives that might be hidden behind cover, and therefore you wouldn't be able to shoot. Where the rest of your army is trying to accrue value before your opponent closes the distance. So yeah,
these warriors as well can just do so much damage because you've got AP 1 shred. Like you're bringing people down 1 point, making their ones doubles. They can just be fantastic. And yeah, the raid casters A2, AP4. you've got Unstoppable on there for good measure, they can be really quite deadly.
Yeah, really don't leave home without the Raycasters. I think they're such a great addition to that unit.
Ooh, yeah, they can be nice and spicy. And then for the Age of Fantasy, the Wood Elves. Love it. No trees. No trees, though, but I think you are quite right that this is good for the slow roll.
Yeah, so very similar to what I've just kind of described with the Robot Legions. The Beetle Swarm is basically the Lord in this case.
Yeah.
It's a unit that you can use to do stuff. It can use to block attacks as well, right? Very useful for armies that want to be slightly more evasive. Owl Riders fill the role of jet bikes in the previous list, right? Like very useful. Quick Shot Mark lets them be active even on the last round. Flying is even more annoying than Strider. It's really hard to block that thing from doing stuff. You're playing an AoF world. You may notice there's not really much AP in this list.
Yeah.
Now that's by design, right? Like in AoF, you're very unlikely to come across a list where you can't deal with. Where it's all Def 2. Demons are basically the ones that can really do that, and then they'll have a really small number of units, and you're not too worried about that in an objective game. So really, this kind of is looking to remove all the chaff and then decap stuff, and cap the things that it can cap. Forest Watch are not ambush units. Don't believe the hype. You don't ambush these guys. You just play them for their very, very aggressive playstyle that lets them accrue value very quickly. Wild Veil keeps them more safe than you'd think.
Wild Veil, I really want the opportunity to play more Wood Elves. In a pure Age of Fantasy world. They don't match into Grimdark Future. They don't match into tournament packs. Just base game, they are phenomenal.
No.
Forest Watch, don't ambush them. Harvey gave me that tip into my last event, and I listened to him, and it was much better not ambushing these guys. Yeah, this quick shot mark, a singleton quick shot mark, just turns... It flips the switch, and it turns on so much of the army. 3 and 4 inches, and we're turning on an army here. It's so effective. Your Outriders, if they need to just move 8 inches and shoot, and then give this to somebody else, like your Forest Watch, such good synergy. Or, as I think I used it pretty much entirely for themselves, because 16-inch of flying shooters on Core 3 is really very good. So it's a really nice upgrade for your Outriders.
A small synergy there about the quick shot mark, like you mentioned, is... on the first round, you're 24 inches away from your opponent. So with Forest Watch, you move 6 inches and then you shoot 18. So you can't really be the aggressor there. Your opponent has to leave the line for you to be able to shoot them, unless you have quick shot mark on them, at which point you can move the 6.1 inches and shoot them. And the Outrider can get within range because they're fast, so they move 8 inches forwards plus an 18-inch mark. So you can always enable your Forest Watch to start accruing value early on in the game. And then obviously quick shot mark then lets you also run away with your Forest Watch at full pelt, or run into objectives and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, really, really nice as a one-off. And then also just Eternal Hunters as well. The Pierce rule is one of those ones that kind of like is a bit of a sneaky boy. Occasionally you're going to actually really, really blast people with that. So slightly more aggressive than it might appear. It's very similar to Furious in a way. On a 6, you get bonuses, right? It's like a deadly version of Furious, where Furious would give you an extra hit. This gives you an extra wound when they fail. So it's in a similar way to Deadly, where they need to fail it, but then you get more wounds, whereas the other one is more like Blast. Yeah. So not to be underestimated.
Fantastic. Now let's go and have a look at our Round 2 Go. This is the sort of thing where, you just want to click play and sit back and listen. Pause, have a look at the screen. Well, don't pause. Actually, pause was the wrong word. Don't pause.
Yeah, don't pause. That's the one thing you can't do here.
That's the one thing you can't do, because there's units dropping off the bottom here. Stop and have a look, and we'll give you the time, because it's not about this thing and the flipping splitting out insane dudes here. What I want to just talk about is how fucking sick. Where is it? Change warrior. Good. This now pause. Now pause. For those of you who paused and went, what the fuck is Dave on about? He means now. Do it now. Because we have got casters with ambush. Already spoken about that. Very good for Round 2 Go. Then we've got this new rule spell accumulator, which lets you use other people's accumulated tokens as though they were your own. So it's not just, you're not just boosting your level 2 casts. If you only had 1 token left and there was 3 spell accumulators in range, you can cast a level 3 spell.
Oh yeah.
It's huge for that. And then it's that you can get those upgrades, a caster one and a spell accumulator one, into core units.
Oh yeah.
Talk us through the insanity of this Wormhole Demons of Chains list.
Yeah, so to do this, I'm just gonna have to go into my phone for a second because one day I wrote this list and I was like, how many times can you actually cast? So I had to write it down on my phone to be able to figure it out. Yeah, so you coming into round two, this is round two go, right? So the emphasis here is you coming down an ambush and you do a bunch of stuff. So your main unit has got a hero with caster 3 who has three, so they will therefore have 6 tokens in round 2. It's got 2 caster 1s in it in the Changed Warrior stacks, which therefore will have 2 tokens each. And then they will have 4 accumulated tokens on the hero. There are 4.
You got 2 spell accumulators, so 4 spell accumulators in the unit on round 2.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other units have caster and spell accumulator them. So the other champions of change and change warriors, right? So the idea is that every unit in this first unit is going to be casting as many 6-hit AP2s as possible.
Yeah.
And you're going to be casting them on AP2, right? So
on a 2-up.
On a 2-up, yeah, sorry.
It's this first
every unit here
having
can cast
3 casters.
3 casts of 6 hits AP2 is what they're throwing out in that first round.
On a 2-up.
Yeah, on a 2-up. And then you still have more tokens after that. So they can all cast the 6 AP2, I believe. And then they can also all cast, I think it's like the 2 4-hits or at least the 2 hits AP1 and slash. So what you're coming down with is a very, very, very explosive unit. And because it's casting, it's got no amount of target restrictions. So you could go 6 AP2, 6 AP2 on 3 different units, cripple 3 units. And then this unit can also charge. So this unit also has a really, really decent profile. It's got A3, AP3 shred, 2 of those on the main guys, and then all the little guys are A2 shred. So you end up with this like one unit that charges something, cripples it, throws out a bunch of 6 AP2 on 2-ups, cripples those. And then your opponent has a choice of, well, you can charge that unit, but it's basically spent everything it's got. Or you can charge one of the smaller change warrior units, but there's still the other one alive. So the other one then does similar things, right? It starts to pull spell accumulator tokens back from the original unit and cast its own AP3 and continues to go. And all the while this is going on, this is like your surgical strike. You have the rest of the list, which is just a bunch of change horrors, which are traditionally very, very hard units to deal with. So you've got the new horror champion of change, who's just on 140 points, who spawns 5 lesser change horrors when he dies, which are just, tiny little guys who then split into more changelings. So you've got like 3 layers there. So you need to kill the first guy, you need to kill the second unit and the third unit. And then you've got 3 units of change horrors who do the same journey. So they go down into smaller ones and into smaller ones. And then you've also actually just got 1 unit of lesser change horrors, which also split into changelings. So you've just got like this enormous amount of bodies behind that is going to just bog down the board and hold the objectives for as long as they can. And then you have a surgical strike, which in theory can blow up basically anything your opponent is doing. And then you very quickly almost get like a flank overload strategy, but anywhere on the board, right? So you have like chaff that you're sending out everywhere, and then you're just destroying the part of the board that your opponent has. And if also, it's worth noting that if you come down and annihilate their position, the chance of them being able to wipe out these units for next round is small. And then you can continue this into the next round. It's not as potent because you only get 3 tokens back, but you can then move that way and do 2 more, a load more of 6 hits AP2 on more units. You just don't get all the extra spell casts. So I'd say this is probably the very, very definition of a round 2 go list. I don't think there's a more round 2 go list than the Wormhole Demons at Change at the moment. And honestly, it looks super fucking fun. If you're playing the tournament pack, don't bring this. But if you're playing base OPR, yeah, absolutely bring this. This looks fun as hell.
This looks fun as hell. Like, I'm another one that I'm like, I want more base OPR events to just bring this and try it out one day. Because, just this one unit coming in and dropping in. So, I can't even remember the maths. We did maths out, but something like the ability to crack out at least 5 unit crippling attacks, 3 loads of 6 hits AP2, and the charge is 4, and then just stacking into these other spells, I think was on the list as well because of piling up spell accumulator. Absolutely.
Yeah, what I've got is so the main unit has 6 hero tokens and 2 model tokens twice, right?
Yeah, so that's 14 already.
And then there's 4 accumulated hero tokens on the other units, right? Because it's round 2, so the spell accumulators are up to 2 on all the heroes, and they're up to 2 on all the models as well. So in total, so in total you've got I think 18. Is that 18? Total tokens that you can use. It's 10, 18 total tokens, which is an insane number of caster tokens ever.
Yeah.
But what that means is the 2 models in the unit with caster 1 can cast on a 2-up at 6 as AP2. The hero can cast on a 2-up, 6 as AP2, and the hero can then also cast a level 2 on a 3-up as well. So yeah, you get those kind of 4 spells, of which 3 of them are single target, but one of them is potentially 2 more targets. And then you also get the charge. It's got to be the most amount of things you can affect in one turn, surely, with a single unit. And then, like I said, the side units have 4 on the heroes and 2 on the models. And the main unit then that we've already activated has 2 on the heroes and 4 on the models, which then that extra unit then pulls from. So they need to charge the big guy to remove the spell accumulator tokens, but they're probably not going to do that. They're probably going to charge an activated unit, but then one of the unactivated units, the other unactivated unit, then does its thing, which is another 6-6 AP2 on a 2-up, and then a 6-6 AP2 on a 3-up. So at this point, there's just so many 6-6 AP2 flying around the board.
The bigger challenge, I think, is can 2 hours into the video people actually understand what words we're saying?
Absolutely not. There's a reason I wrote a note on it, right? It's really hard to follow. All you need to know is the main unit does 3 lots of 6-6 AP2 on a 2-up, plus an extra level 2 spell. The side units do a 6-6 AP2 on a 2-up and a 6-6 AP2 on a 3-up. And that's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah. So this is a very classic round 2 go. Super fun. And especially so this is obviously in a GDF context, right?
Yeah.
So 6-6 AP2 is really, really good against lots of things. It's not going to kill really high tough models, so that you might just come across Titan Lords and be really sad. But that's where your change horrors come in. It's really hard for Titan Lords to deal with change horrors, right? The best thing they can do is try and shake them, which is obviously, crippling because they can't capture objectives at that point. But if they're more likely to actually kill them than they are shake them. And that's all ignoring the fact this whole army has -1 to hit over 9 inches, right? Yeah. So the change horrors are also really durable in that way, or really annoying in that way. And you can just bung up the board of them as well, right? You can't move through enemy things. So when you put down 20 change, whatever they're called, you can just block off objectives with them and such. And I think, is it within 6 inches they have to spawn?
Yeah,
within 6 inches. So you can actually create a wall, a 6-inch wall with the unit you've just made.
12-inch, right? 6 inches either way.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, 12-inch wall. Well, I guess maximum 9 inches because of the unit rules, but
yeah.
So it's slightly longer on this list, but this is a list that I think I'm kind of fun. I think it's fun, so it's worth focusing on.
In much more simple terms, here's the ogres, which really comes down to these 3 heroes.
Yeah, so ogres have a very good spell list, 6-6 AP2 again, lol. So I actually, when I built this list, I was like, I want to pick someone that is traditionally not very, this is not really an ambush list, to kind of show the strategy off in a not ambushy list. And also just to show the strategy maybe in a book that doesn't necessarily support the strategy as strongly, but has a way of making it work. To show you how you can apply these playstyles elsewhere. So very similar. So yeah, we've got 3 champions, all with caster, all with ambush, right? So immediately we're into that kind of round 2 big go caster thing. One of the casters has got a big unit of hunters in it. So once again, you'll recognize it from the previous one. A big charge coming in, and casters to try and affect multiple units. And the side casters are feeding tokens into the main caster so you can get as much value as you can. And then we have Sabertooths, which are really interesting for a round 2 go, because once again, unwieldy debuff stops things from attacking first. So, and it's got an 18-inch range, and you can apply it in the first round. So these are fast, they move up, they apply unwieldy debuff to the things you think your opponents are going to activate first. So when you come in round 2, you use your first big unit, and when they charge your second unit, you still get value out of that unit before it gets blasted. And then just two more ambush units to fill out that kind of ambush core of a round 2 go, really. So yeah.
Fantastic. Round Two Go, very interesting in base game. There's a lot to do with it. There is actually a surprising amount of counterplay, and I think that does emphasize the importance of, if you're building a rounded list, of bringing caster, because that can really derail these strategies. But yeah, really, really good fun. Let's have a look at the control lists that we've got going on here. Starting out with Soul Snatcher Cults, this is wouldn't have been the one that I'd have picked as being the control list for Grimdark Future, but I do agree with your approach.
Yeah, so what Dave's referencing there is he would prefer to have gone Plague. So Plague's got really, really nice difficult terrain debuffs, and if you probably the Discord, I'm sure Dave will share a list with it, which I think is a really, really good control list. But once again, I wanted to show some, obviously, like, this has mind control, so therefore it can be a control list, but kind of shows other aspects of control that you can use. So what have we got for our like control core? Well, we've got mind control on the quad bikes. This is a really interesting unit for 145 points. You get quite a decent unit, right? Like, it's not very aggressively statted. It's very frail, right? So it's going to die if they get near it, but it's going to annoy things with mind control, and then it has a flamethrower and a burst pistol. So it's kind of like okay-ish at doing like annoying things on the flanks. It's fast though, so it can move around the board, double movement, and affect things with mind control from really far away. So that becomes part of the mind control core. And the other thing we've got is the mining truck, which a fast transport with Fnatic is going really far on the board. And then it has mind control as well to either stop or encourage. So like to stop them from counter-charge by moving it away, or by bringing things closer to you so you can charge them, moving things out of the way and such. And now this mining truck has a brute champion inside it with mutant brutes. So mutant brutes are just a nice unit, right? A2, AP1 rending with some AP3 in there. And the brute himself's got AP4. But what I've given the brute champion here is actually redeployment. Right, so this is another kind of aspect of control. So you can take this redeployment and you can redeploy your mining truck with brutes into it after your opponent is deployed. And then outside of that, all you've got on the board at that point is your two Soul Snatcher units, which are scout, so they're being deployed later. So all you've got is your two quad bikes and your one cult leader, who once again is just basically a naked guy. I mean, he's got a caster, right? But he's zooming around the map and he's just doing the small objective thing. But this is a different kind of style of control, right? Like I'm controlling deployment as well to get my favorable matchups, and then I'm using mind control in the actual game to move my opponent's things so that I can even further guarantee what I want. So it kind of mixes that kind of like positional advantage thing, using non-traditional methods with stuff like redeployment.
I just think this is fucking exciting. I think redeployment as an ability is one that it took a points nerf quite early on in 3.5, and I think it's good that it did, because I think it is probably stronger than another one of saying I think it's stronger than we're given credit for. And combining it with Fnatic in general is going to be huge. But exactly that, when you've got an alpha striking unit like these amazing mutant brutes, that just paints you a picture of something that is going to be really, really good fun. And then mind control, don't sleep on it late into the game. It can just ruin your opponent's game plan.
For sure.
So the Age of Fantasy comparison for this one is the Vampiric Undead. And again, we're looking at using that mind control effect, but this time more heavily through counter.
Caster.
Through caster.
We do have counter in the list as well, though. So what is this? So this is a kind of like more horde thing, like we mentioned in this other video, like Vampire is very, very horde-y. What this basically is, it's Vampire Masters inside Drain Soldiers, which is a very scary stack. With a banner that puts it up to 2-up morale, which is really nice. They've got counter, so they get to attack first. The Vampire Masters don't slouch in combat, and then he's just a caster heavily embedded in a unit that defends him, which is quite nice. And obviously, don't sleep on Cursed Undead. It's one of those sneaky things that really, really does get you some extra.
You just spike some saves that you shouldn't be guessing.
Yeah, and so remember, this is an AoF context as well. So this is now a Drain leader within Stitch Zombies. Now this is just a great unit. It's really great. It's 300 points. You get 4-up into 4-up morale. You've got a caster really heavily buried deep in it. Very deep in it, I guess.
He's steeped in the depth of the unit.
And zombies are actually really, really scary for AoF, right? Like quality 5 is relatively normal. They have 2 attacks each. They win a lot of combats despite being, slow and being charged first. It doesn't matter that you take the back 8 zombies off when the remaining ones are absolutely slapping you around. The casting list for Vampiric Undead obviously has that mind control effect at rank 2. Which is great. It actually affects 2 units instead of 1, which is why we don't actually see any of the base mind control stuff in here. And they also then obviously get the flexibility of having caster. So stuff like Curse Undead buff, which is going to help you survive, teleport, which is going to help you contest objectives, and then just some deadly attacks as well, which is nice. And 4 hits AP2 is also really good. So a really nice spellcasting list.
Yeah.
And then
really
synergize
nice.
with that, we've got Corpse Wagons. So these give out both Curse Undead buff, which is going to make you more durable, but also casting buff, which is going to make your casters even better. And you've got 4 of those, so that sounds pretty good. This is also just like a Def 3 Tough 6 thing, which isn't super easy to move. So that's pretty good. And then finally, I just had like 200 points left at the end, and I was like, you know what? Nobody hates werewolves, do they? Really? I just throw some werewolves in there. That could be literally anything. It could have been a double stack unit of dogs. I think that's also a good use for it. But I was like, you know what? A little bit of scout never goes amiss in the list, so we'll throw that in there.
Yeah, having played around with the Vampiric Undead quite a bit recently, these corpse wagons are what really crank the dials on this list, on this specific caster teleport mind control build. It just that +1 every turn, just throwing it out. This thing's got regen as well. 8 attacks. It's on core 5, so it's not much, but it can win combats. And then just giving things extra resilience through this. When you've got blocks of 20 6-ups into 6-ups that become 6-ups into 5-ups, really, really good.
That you can't remove with rending or such as well.
Exactly.
I mean, corpse wagons are 125 points as well, which is very, very
so
efficient
cheap.
for what they do.
So cheap. In Age of Fantasy as well, there isn't much blast. It's a problem for people, I think, to chew through this many wounds of 6-ups into 6-ups or 5-ups into 6-ups. Like, certainly, this is the sort of army. When I was saying earlier about Horde crushing Elise armies, there is no way that Eternal Wardens can deal with this.
No, it's a lot of wounds to chew through for sure. Especially, in a world with without the Def 2s and Def 3s traditionally. Base AP attacks are actually very potent. So yeah, very, very scary. And obviously, casters heavily embedded in units is traditionally very good, right? If Eternal Wardens come against this list, then the Drain leaders are going to cast the 3 hits AP2 Deadly 3 on them and wipe out whole units.
Yeah.
If they dare to come close, and if they don't dare to come close, because they can also get double moved on, and then mind controlled towards you, and then blasted with a deadly thing. Obviously, they're fearless 4-ups or whatever, but you get the idea.
Yeah, those morale checks still occasionally fail, right? So yes,
yeah, for sure.
Very exciting. And then finally, let's have a look at some. Oh no, that's it. Why have I got Goblin Reclaimers? Oh, because I was looking at them earlier. Ignore me. I'm just being an absolute muppet here. But those are some absolutely incredible lists to look at for those play styles. That is where we're going to round out the video, folks. That is a lot of content to chew through, but you all seem to really engage with the list building video that we did last week.
Stop encouraging us. It's your fault.
Yeah, if you stop liking our video, guys, and we'll stop recording 2-hour-long ones for you.
Don't go like the video right now. Don't subscribe and don't join the Discord, okay? Ego-wise,
no,
having a nightmare.
Too far. Please do all of those things. It really helps. Please comment in this video below. In particular, join us in the Discord. As we said, it's free. We just love the chat. If you've got more lists you want to talk about, more play styles, if you think you've got a play style that we haven't spoken about here and you want to talk about that and then ask us for lists, come and do it. We just like to chat shit about OPR, and there'll be so many other people in that amazing Discord, amazing community, who will want to talk about it with you too.
Yeah. I think an important thing to note here about the playstyles, just like subsection of this video, is we're not here to tell you whether these playstyles are good or bad. right? But this is just to encourage creativity within list building, right?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
to show you how you can mold an army book and the units within it into certain playstyles, and hopefully that will motivate you to kind of start like playstyle first list building, right? You'll go like, oh, I'm going to have a strategy, I'm going to have a playstyle in mind. I'm going to go pick the book that I think fits it, or maybe pick a book that doesn't fit it and try and force it into that mold, and then come out with something that feels very cohesive. Which I think makes list building slightly more exciting when you feel like you've kind of like got the complete package or you've kind of figured it out.
I also
So yeah, as Dave said, highly encourage you to come post your playstyles down below, post the list you've come up with it, right? And maybe even take on this like GDF AoF challenge, right? Like if you've got a certain playstyle that you really like in one of the systems, try and build the same thing in the different system, and you'll see how very subtle changes to a book, very subtle changes to a system will lead to a similar playstyle, but it'll be drastically different with the way you've achieved it.
Yeah, for sure. I think that almost skipping back a point in terms of think about your play style and try and come to your book and create this new thing, innovate. There is a fair amount of discourse about 3.5. I think that's not unfair to say. A lot of people have said my favorite army is ruined. Take a new play style and try it on your favorite army. Or take your army's favorite playstyle and try it elsewhere. The ability to keep playing OPR the way that you used to like it is still there. But I think what's most exciting is there are new ways to try all of these armies. What may not have aligned with the fluff in your head can still give you room to enjoy something within your old mold. So just give it a go. Try a new way of playing your favorite army. You may find that you fall in love with it in a different way. You find the flavor, the lore that you were looking for is now manifesting in a different way. Until you try something new, though, you're not going to find that love, and you might just stay grumpy. And hey, if you're going to stay grumpy, not our job to change your mind on that one. But
yeah, I think also
love the game. It can be there.
Hopefully, the archetype section of the video as well has helped kind of reinforce people's heads that armies are not just their army wide. Yeah, it's not just about that. It's about what the units do as a whole and how they interact with each other, right? Like we have Ghost the Undead in the aggressive Horde section, and we've got machine cults in the defensive Horde section, right? And they've got the same army wides, right? And that is just an opinion piece or whatever, but there's more to an army than just the army wide. So if you didn't get the army wide you wanted for 3.5, don't sweat it too much, right? The playstyles still sit in there, right? A lot of the really aggressive armies don't have really aggressive army wides, so basically every single one of the aggressive armies doesn't have an aggressive army wide apart from maybe orcs. Alien Hives, super aggressive, but is rocking +1 morale.
What have we got in the offensive? We've got orcs, Volk dwarves, I suppose, is kind of up there, and Shiv Kingdoms for the same reason, and ogres. But that's what just over half of the ones that are in the fantasy one and in the Grimdark Future. Goblin Reclaimers and Orcs and Jackals, they are, and Dow Union. A bit more, I think, than 6 of them, I think I've just counted there, for the offensive Grimdark Future ones. But the important thing is it's not 100%, and it's not all bar one. We've got things like the Hives, and they can go pretty much anywhere, who are up there as well. You've got the Dark Elf Raiders, who've got a very defensive one. Like, it does come down to the army cards as well as the actual army-wide rule. Well, we've blabbed, we've cried, we've laughed. We hope you've enjoyed.
A short video from Don't Think Just Charge. You're welcome.
We are making YouTube shorts left, right, and center.
There's about 80 million YouTube shorts in this one.
And we're two quid into the we're 2 quid into the swear jar for 2 mentions of War Boss Vets.
That is true. Yeah, that is true. I mean, it'd be nice if YouTube Shorts were relative to your channel, right? Like our YouTube Shorts should be allowed to go up to half an hour, I think, given the content we post. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. As ever, I'm Dave. He's Harvey. This is Don't Think Just Charge. Peace.